Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group. We're located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today we're talking about a special master demand by Donald Trump and the search at Mar-a-Lago. He's saying that we need to have somebody who's a third party come out and monitor this entire affair, because the FBI agents, they just came into his personal house and they just raided a bunch of boxes. And they were even in Melania's closet, and they were sort of, just rummaging around over there, seizing his passports, dumping out entire desk drawers, just dumping it right out there. And we saw the photograph of this yesterday. Clearly looks staged, but we're going to unpack a lot of this today. And as usual, we're going to the mind map to properly get our bearings straight. And as you'll see, we've got 4 segments today, and we're going to bounce around a little bit, really staying on the same theme. But we've got the big news of the day, of course, was the hearing. We've spent all week talking about this. We had the original complaint that was filed by Donald Trump, and we had a response that we spent all day yesterday on the show talking about. Today, we're going to see it was the actual day for oral arguments. It was scheduled. They had oral arguments today. Because it's a federal court proceeding, we don't have any audio or video of it, but we do have a nice summary. I was able to find a good report over there from Politico, so we'll see what they said happened there. But before we do, we want to take a look at Donald Trump's response. So he actually filed a reply to the response that came out from the prosecutors. And so we'll read through that, because we spent about a full hour yesterday going through the government's response. This is the reply to the response, right? It's like a sandwich. We'll get there in a minute. We'll check up on the docket to see if there's anything new that came out that hit the docket before we wrap up on the show. And then we'll change gears, because Donald Trump was responding to all of this, and we haven't had a lot of this recently. I mean, yes, we have been checking in on Truth Social and seeing what he's been posting there. But after the photo came out yesterday, Trump was hitting the phones big time, in a big way. He was on several different shows over the last 24 hours, and I've got about 5 clips of it all. He's saying that, they sort of staged the photo, which seemed pretty obvious, saying that he thinks they were looking for Hillary emails or Crossfire Hurricane stuff. And he said, I don't know what the big deal about all this was, because they watched me move the boxes, and they watched me unpack all of these issues there. And now they're making a big deal about it. What's all of that about? He also said that this is setting a new tone. This is setting new standards. If they are rating him as a former president, what happens when he's in charge? What happens when they start wanting to, raid other former presidents or other political opponents? Could be problems, is what he's saying. And then another big headline came out. I mean, goodness, we on this channel have spent a ton of time talking about the January 6th saga. I mean, we had the whole mind map, an entire mind map for that over at j6mindmap.com. And now Donald Trump is speculating or hinting. He's saying that if I decide to run, which is a big if still, I guess, and if I win, so 2 ifs, he says, I'm considering a pardon for all the J6ers. And that's like, whoa, that's a spicy meatball. Can you imagine that as a campaign promise, right? Coming into 2024, he's going to pardon all of the J6ers. Woo, a lot of people are going to be feeling a way about that. And so we'll see what he had to say. That's, of course, we got a lot of Donald Trump in the second segment today. Then we'll move on to the third segment. We've got some reaction from the Democrats and this guy, Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, the turtle, Cocaine Mitch, here he is. And he hasn't said much about it. And he's not going to say much about it here today. Why would he? He's got no observations about this. But we're going to hear from the usual hystericists, people like Amy Klobuchar. She's saying, this is atrocious. I can't believe he would have photos like this dumped out on the ground by the FBI. And then we'll look at this guy, Andrew Weismann. He's one of the most painful people to listen to on this subject. But I want to play him just so you can see the other side. We're like, Fox News, like Fair and Balanced over here or something. But I do want to play this clip for him. He's on MSNBC all the time, and he's just sort of whining about Trump having to be prosecuted, saying if Merrick Garland doesn't prosecute him, America's basically over. Just hang it up. There's nothing left. And so we'll take a look at what his statement is before we actually learn that there's probably just going to keep hanging this thing over everybody's head up until after the midterms. And so Bloomberg is reporting that they don't think criminal charges are going to be coming anytime soon, right? Not until after the midterms. They sort of want to hang on to this thing as long as they can. And then lastly, we've got, Joe Biden. He's set to speak here in about 55 minutes. And so I've got that queued up. Let's actually see if there's any activity over here. No, you can still see here. The YouTube says 54 minutes. And then Joe Biden will be lecturing us all about, whatever. So we'll have to come back and check that out. Here it is. See him here. President Biden delivers a primetime speech on the continued battle for the soul of the nation. Okay. All right. So we'll come back and check in on that, see if there's anything worthwhile over there. I doubt it. But, the White House is actually reversing course a little bit. It's actually kind of hysterical to watch this. Now, nobody's really paying attention to this, but of course we do. Here, he said, Biden, that Republicans were threatening our security and threatening America. And KJP said something very similar, but KJP came out today and she sort of changed direction on that. She's like, well, we're only talking about a very small segment of elected officials and how I'd like to revise all my prior statements. And so we'll dig into that and then we'll see what Joe Biden has for us in 53 minutes or so. And so, my friends, as you can see, obviously, there's just a lot of stuff to get to today. And if you want to be a part of the show, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got an amazing community over there. Paul Mino is in the house, and actually, he just shared this photograph. You see what kind of shenanigans are going on over here at the Locals community? That's why you want to be over there. That's what Paul Mino just shared for us. Shout out to Paul. Shout out to Rocky Trump. Outstanding. Just going to get after it. But that's what's over there at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Shout outs to my friend Savvy Sue, Jason On Blast, John McGarvey says, I'm part of the show. He is, literally right there. Vientikis Prime is in the house, and many others. Words Mean Things, Radicy. Shout out to everybody over there. You can also join on YouTube. Shout out to my YouTube friends. You get those GIFs out there that you can insert into the chat comments. In particular, you get the Full Metal Jacket Binger GIF, Don't get brazen with me. And you also have, of course, Hunter Biden. I really don't know. I really didn't know. And so you can use those anytime you want. And of course, I appreciate your support for our law firm. We have a lot of fun here on this channel, but every day we're helping really good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their limited criminal cases, but hopefully beyond that in their lives. We offer free case evaluations, 480-787-0394. You can also head on over to our website. An amazing team of people, literally amazing. And the team just gets better and better every time we have a meeting. Honestly, it's like, wow, this is just working out so well. So check us out, 480-787-0394. We love to help people. Your referrals mean we get to do our life's work, fulfill our mission, and we're grateful for that. All right. And so now it's time to get everything queued up because look at this. We got 4 different segments that we are going to dive through today. And we're starting here with oral arguments. The Donald Trump judge heard oral arguments on his request to appoint a special master to oversee the DOJ investigation and to take oversight over what the FBI is doing, rummaging through their boxes. Oral arguments were scheduled, and we had several people that were in attendance. We have Christopher Kise, who is Trump's newest lawyer, the newest addition to the team. We'll do a quick recap on who he is. We had the U.S. DOJ attorney, who is named Jay Bratt. He is over there at the Counterintelligence Office. We'll learn a little bit more about him. And then the judge presiding over the case is this woman here. Her name is Judge Aileen Cannon, and she was actually appointed by Donald Trump. But you see that the motion was scheduled for oral arguments today, September 1st at 1 p.m., conducted out there in West Palm Beach, Florida. And it went on for some time, and we're going to unpack that through an article. Of course, this is federal court, and we can't see or hear or record any audio or reproduce anything. So we're going to have to sort of read, another party's take who was actually physically there at the courthouse. But before we dive into that, we also have to remember that this is really an oral argument about motions. These are motions that have been written and they're being debated. And we have spent a lot of time unpacking these motions. We read Trump's original complaint, which is saying, this is why we need a special master, just to make sure we're all caught up to speed. Trump originally said, Judge, I don't want the FBI rummaging through my stuff. I want you to do 4 things. Number 1, appoint a special master, somebody to manage this process. But I need an inventory of property. I need to see what they have. I need to have what is left returned back to me. And I also want you to stop counting, right? I stop reviewing I'm thinking counting electoral votes or something, but stop reviewing the documents, right? So 4 different things. And the government responded and they said, this is why, Judge, you shouldn't do any of those things at all. And we read through that motion yesterday in great detail, explaining that their objections were, they said, Trump, you don't have any standing. These aren't even your records. These don't even belong to you. So why would you even think that you could object to us retaining them? And the judge also, or the prosecutors also said the judge doesn't have jurisdiction over this, and all sorts of additional arguments that we spent a lot of time talking about. But now, as you can see, Trump replied to that response. It's sort of like a sandwich. Trump moves first. The other side gets to move second. Trump gets to move again. And so this is that document. Let's take a look at what Trump said, because all of this was filed prior to today's hearing. You see, Donald Trump versus United States of America, the title of this motion, is Trump's reply to the United States response to the motion for judicial oversight and additional relief. Trump moved first, government moves second, Trump's moving third. Trump gets the last word since it's his motion. 19 pages here. And it's also filed on the same docket. And remember, there were 2 parallel cases that were happening at the same time, the original search warrant case and Trump versus US. This is that second case. The first one has largely been quiet outside of a notice of appearance for Christopher Kise. Trump and his defense team, they respond. They say President Trump, through counsel, files this response. 3 weeks after an unprecedented and unnecessarily and legally unsupported raid on the home of a president and possibly a candidate against the current chief executive in 2024, the government, here these people, represented by the DOJ and the U.S. Attorney's Office, has filed an extraordinary document with this court, suggesting that the DOJ and the DOJ alone should be entrusted with the responsibility of evaluating its unjustified pursuit of criminalizing a former president's possession of personal and presidential records in a secure setting. You want us to just trust the U.S. Department of Justice? Are you nuts? They write, now, the government twists the framework of responding to a motion for a special master into an all-encompassing challenge to any judicial consideration presently or in the future of any aspect of its unprecedented behavior into this investigation. Footnote 1. Footnote 1 saying, by the way, Judge, Trump does not at this time address every misleading or incomplete statement of purported, quote, fact made by the government in its responses at pages 3 to 14. However, Trump at this point will simply highlight that one specific event, the June 3rd, 2022 meeting, has been significantly mischaracterized in the government's response. If the government provided the same untrue account in the affidavit in support of the search warrant, then they misled the magistrate judge. And that June 3rd date was a pretty important date. I think that was the final sort of straw for them. They said we showed up, they signed the custodian of record, was certifying that everything was transitioned over. They made all of these promises and made all of these proffers that all of the things had been done, and they weren't. And so they're saying if that was the meeting that they're relying on to stand out and say that we needed a warrant, they lied to you, Judge. But they say we'll get to that later. Back to this issue at hand about special master. They say, Judge, the government's argument against oversight, they don't want anybody to come in and watch them doing their business. They say it begins with a contention that somehow Trump lacks standing to object to a search of his home. The convoluted theory here, which appears to be that the Biden administration will not allow President Trump to assert executive privilege, and consequently he has, quote, no right to possess presidential documents, and that therefore he has no standing to object to their seizure, is contrary to the well-established doctrine of standing. It is the reasonable expectation of privacy in one's home that triggers the obvious standing of the homeowner to contest a search on the premises. Doesn't matter if you're president or not. You can challenge the FBI invading your house. To suggest that the seizure of allegedly, quote, illegally possessed items negates standing literally distorts the entire concept of fruit of the poisonous tree in a bizarre notion that if the recovered property is potentially illegal to possess, then the homeowner can never challenge the basis of the intrusion. This argument by the government is premature and deeply flawed, as described in detail more below. Sort of like, yeah, they can just come in if they search your house and they find drugs. They say, well, we thought the drugs were in there, so any basis of the search is legitimate, and you can't even challenge it. Why? Because we found the drugs. We thought there were going to be drugs in there, so we dumped all over your constitutional rights, invaded your home. Oh my gosh, we found drugs. So that justifies the illegal use of their authority to violate the Fourth Amendment. That's their argument. And he's saying that's ridiculous. Every single fruit of the poisonous tree argument, which is the basis of basically criminal procedure, would be thrown out into the garbage. Nonsense. They say the government similarly uses the opportunity here to respond to a limited inquiry to inject its inconsistent position on the applicability and the impact of the Presidential Records Act. And how that impacts the government's ability to lawfully use a criminal search warrant to rummage through Mar-a-Lago. Trump's team, they say, Judge, in the government's summary of their argument in the pages that we read previously, the government acknowledges the applicability of the Presidential Records Act. Okay, they know that we're in this book. We talk about the law. What type of law? What are we? Criminal law, family law, juvenile law, personal injury, tort law? Where are we? We're in the Presidential Records Act. Got it. No disagreements there. Thus, there is no question, and indeed, there is a broad agreement that the matters before this court center around the possession by a president of his own presidential records, because that's the law that we're in. Even so, the DOJ then pivots, dropping a footnote 9 pages later that claims the statutes cited in the search warrant, 18 U.S. Code 793, 2071, and 1519, reflect the fact that, quote, this investigation is not simply about efforts to recover improperly retained presidential records. So they say it's more than that in a footnote later. Defense says, indeed, the warrant intentionally blurs important distinctions in referring to the ability of the FBI agents to seize presidential records. In quotes, presidential records, in quotes, parentheses, the PRA, the Presidential Records Act, never concerns itself with traditional classification labels, saying if you just read through it, they don't say, oh, these are presidential records and these are non-presidential records and these are personal records. They don't classify that. So they're now making up this category, and the FBI agents are using it wrongfully and suggesting that the applicability of the Espionage Act and referring to expectations of recovering classified or highly classified documents is justified. Trump's defense says, for the moment, counsel for Trump can only speculate on how the affidavit in support of the search warrant characterized the government's intended escape from the PRA paradigm. Right? If we're talking about Trump's personal and presidential records, we know that we're in the jurisdiction. We're under the umbrella of the PRA. And we can't see what's in the affidavit because giant portions of that are still sealed, right? Most of it. And so they're saying, well, we don't know. I mean, it feels like we should be within this purview, but we don't know how we're outside of it. And if you just look at the Presidential Records Act, which they acknowledge is the jurisdictional component of this because of their search warrant, we can't understand how this is a crime because they haven't told us. They say what is also noteworthy here is that as admitted in the response, which came from the prosecutors, just weeks after Trump voluntarily complied with the National Archives' request for the records and turned over 15 boxes, NARA simply ignored the PRA and initiated a criminal investigation. Right? So they weren't going under those records. They just said, well, we don't follow that, I guess. The purported justification for the initiation of this probe was the alleged discovery of sensitive information within the 15 boxes. Remember, Trump handed over a batch of boxes and they rummaged through those and they said, we think there's more here and we don't like how these were stored. And they said, okay, in that case, we need everything. They say this, quote, discovery was to be fully anticipated given the very nature of presidential records. Simply put, the notion that presidential records would contain sensitive information should have never been a cause for alarm. Rather, as contemplated under the Presidential Records Act, the law, NARA should have simply followed up with Trump in good faith efforts to secure the recovery of the presidential records. They say, despite the clear desperation of the government in avoiding the broad parameters of the PRA that allow Trump to possess the documents, Trump declines the invitation to take on all future litigation in the narrow context of the court's ordered response regarding the appointment of a special master. So they're saying with this, look, he's not going to litigate this thing to the end of the earth right here, right now. Right? We're not going to go through this entire litany of the Presidential Records Act and all of that. Now's not the time. Okay, this is a big issue, yeah, but we're going to save that for later, Judge. The basis of this motion here today, these remaining 16 pages, is about this special master, and we have debates about whether this person should be appointed or not. They're saying absolutely should. Why? Paragraph 1. Trump has standing to seek the appointment of a special master. They say the question of standing is a threshold matter. We can't even start this case until we answer this. Does he have the ability to request this? They say we're going to address the merits of a special master request later. But right now, we're seeking a judicial review before this court. They say, Judge, at the outset, these government prosecutors do not cite any precedent at all for its assertion that Trump lacks standing to request the appointment of a special master. They didn't give you any case law. Courts assessing past requests for the appointment of a special master have seemed to assume, and rightly, that the target of a search and seizure has standing to seek a neutral review of the seized materials. Right? Don't you kind of give that party the benefit of the doubt? Don't you just say, well, look, they've got questions and issues with this process, so let's just calm them down. Look, we'll appoint somebody here, relax. You're going to see everything's above board. They write, for example, there was a recent case out of the Southern District of New York in 2018 where they say the subject of a search warrant there requested the appointment of a special master because there were privilege claims. And the Southern District of New York granted the request. Right? Like, this is Donald Trump, the former president. What happens if this is like your lawyer, right? Like the Oath Keeper's lawyer just got arrested. I think, or the Proud Boys, one of the two. Just got arrested today, and we'll unpack all of that tomorrow probably. But when her office gets raided, she's going to have a lot of issues. She's going to say, I've got a lot of clients, and if you seize my boxes of my clients, that's privileged information, and I don't want the U.S. government having information on my clients. So she would demand a special master or somebody to facilitate any seizure of evidence in this hypothetical. So they're going through and they're saying, yeah, attorney-client privilege, Southern District granted that one. Also, if you want to see a Southern District of Florida case, Judge, 1995, this court granted the request from a warrant subject to appoint a special master. And they reference that. United States versus Abel 9145 F Sup 519 is where you can find that if you want this actual citation for it. Also, another case out of Arizona, shout out, taking under advisement for a warrant subjects, the person who was the subject of the warrant, their request for a special master. They say the government in those cases did not even raise the standing questions in any of them because the subject of a search warrant always has the ability to seek the neutral review of seized materials. Right? It's a stupid argument. And we talked about this morning on our morning walk and talk. We said it's almost insulting to the court to say, Judge, sorry, they can't even challenge the search warrant of their own home because I guess he's the former president. He loses the right to do that or something. I don't know. It's nuts. It's kind of insulting. And this is the point they're making. They say here, the government grounds its standing arguments in matters related to the potential return of seized property. So they go and they cite an 11th Circuit case saying that the government has a possessory interest in the property seized, right? So Trump is making a neutral arbiter third party review argument. We want a neutral party to come in here and sort of act as a referee on this thing. And they're talking about the property. Trump is talking about property, certainly, but it's a separate issue, right? He wants the overage returned. They say that argument is not relevant to Trump's standing to seek the appointment of a special master. All we want is a neutral review of the seized material. However, prior court decisions implies the opposite of the government's argument. Even when the subject of a search warrant lacks the right to the return of the property under the rules, the individual is still entitled to have the court decide the merits of the motion. right? So they're saying, Judge, you can't even listen to Trump's arguments because he has no standing. Don't even read the rest of the motion. He shouldn't even be here with this request. And they're saying that's ridiculous, right? We need the judge to sort of get over that threshold issue because that is a big part of the underlying debate entirely. Whose property was it? To the extent that possessory interests factor into the court's standing analysis at all, they are not relevant to Trump's right to seek a special master. Property is different than a referee. The game ball is different than the referee. As to which, again, the government cites no applicable precedent. They just wrote it in there. But rather, they say Trump's right to challenge the underlying search and seizure is eviscerated because of it. Trump's defense says, Judge, considering that the matter would be premature and Trump has not yet sought to challenge the warrant or the ensuing search, we have to keep that in mind. But even reaching that issue, if we do decide to challenge that, established precedent, prior cases, contradicts the government's position, as a litigant need not show a possessory interest in seized material in order to object that a search is unreasonable under the Fourth Amendment. Right? What if you own the home but not the property that was seized? Can you still challenge the search? They argue yes. On the issue of standing, an individual objecting to a seizure as unreasonable generally must, quote, claim to have either owned or possessed or seized in the seized property or have a substantial possessory interest. And they give us some more citations. But they write, in contradiction of this precedent, the government is telling you that standing is different. And if you accept their version of this, Judge, it significantly undermines the effect of the Fourth Amendment. Any discovery of any illicit materials would retroactively justify improper searches. If you broke into the house illegally or you conducted an illegal search warrant, all you have to do is say, oh, but we found something bad. And that justifies the searches. And if somebody complains about that, they can't file a complaint because they found the bad things, saying that the search subjects would not even be entitled to judicial review because they would not have standing. So it's sort of arguing that the government's interpretation is preposterous. Judge, if you accepted this whole thing would just be ridiculous, right? The defense writes, Judge, in general, the government's argue is also premature. We've not filed any Rule 41 motions. We haven't done anything at this stage. And so right now, Trump has standing to seek the appointment of special master. Now, some of this is a little heavy lifting, but remember we were talking about the difference between sort of legal jurisdiction and equitable jurisdiction, and the idea that one of the things that Trump was requesting is that they get certain documents returned back to them and that they get an order from the government to stop doing something immediately. One of those was to stop actually rummaging through the records. This is addressing that. They're saying the court should exercise its equitable jurisdiction to sort of make sure that this all is resolved properly for both sides. They say here, the government is saying, right, the appointment of a special master, in other words, would not be fair, is what they're saying. It would not be in accordance with the principles of equity. And saying it would be fundamentally inequitable, right? They're saying, Judge, if you, look, we're the DOJ, okay? We know how this stuff works. If you bring in a special master and you say, you're in charge now, sir, he's going to step all over our toes. You know, it's sort of like in the movies where you have like, the good local cops like Sergeant Bob and former LEO here, and they're out there and they're patrolling, doing their jurisdiction, or they're saving Nakatomi Plaza or whatever. And then the feds show up, right? The FBI shows up and they're like, oh gosh, John McClane and that guy from Family Matters or something, you know, they all start saying, oh, the FBI's here. And so that's what the DOJ is doing. They're saying, oh gosh, Judge, if you appoint a special master, it's not going to be fair for us. Like it's good. They're going to come in here and rummage around. We know what we're doing. Trump's defense says, in this respect, the government's position assumes a conclusion of these proceedings and its investigation that Trump will be found to have improperly held materials in the violation of the law. But the government reads into the Presidential Records Act an enforcement provision that does not exist. The law exhorts a former president to interface with the archivist to ensure the preservation of presidential records. But even accepting as true the government's accounts of its discussions with Trump and Trump's lawyers, the trajectory of this case does not demonstrate inequitable conduct on the part of Trump, and certainly not to such an extent that the court need to decline its equitable jurisdiction here. They say, the government asserts that the court should not exercise its jurisdiction because it's got to continue its review of the seized materials. But, Judge, yes, we know they're still working on this, and they've got an urgent interest in doing that, is what they say. Judge, we have to move quickly. We got to move quick. National security. Trump could have been selling this to the Saudis or Putin or who knows, Russia. And they're panicked about it. So they got to move quickly, urgency. Elsewhere, however, they say, yeah, that might be what they tell you, Judge. But elsewhere, the government states that the filter team has, quote, already completed its work of segregating any of the seized materials, and the government's investigative team has already reviewed all of the remaining materials. Saying, Judge, quote, in any event, the investigative team has already reviewed all of the seized materials that were not segregated by the filter team. So the defense says, well, the government appears to argue simultaneously that a special master is not needed because the review is complete, and that a special master is inappropriate because such an appointment would interfere with the review process. So you don't need it because we're already done. But if you do appoint one, it's going to interfere with our process that we're done with. What? So which is it? Given the government has completed its review, the, quote, urgent interest it asserts here should not preclude the court from exercising its jurisdiction. And finally, Judge, they say the government argues that the court should not have jurisdiction because a special master is not needed to protect any of Trump's rights. Trump's okay. He doesn't need anybody out there looking after him, okay? He's a big orange guy and he's fine. We're the DOJ and we've done a great job at all of this. Trump's lawyer said, well, Judge, look, as an initial matter, the government has indicated that it seized privileged and potentially privileged materials. So they're saying we don't have to worry about Trump's rights, and they ran off with his passports and privileged documents. That's curious. In light of such a disclosure, Judge, it would only seem reasonable for the court to follow the same procedure that has occurred in numerous prior cases involving privileged materials, particularly in a matter attracting as much attention and as much significance as this one. Furthermore, we acknowledge executive privilege benefits the United States. Trump continues to have rights related to executive privilege. They say the archivist's course of action in relation to this present matter reflects this dynamic. Executive Order 13489 explicitly provides for the assertion of executive privilege by the former president, and it requires the archivist, the national librarian, to solicit the assertions from the former president prior to releasing privileged materials. They say in light of administrative provisions allowing a former president to weigh on any benefit of those benefits the country, and if you undermine that, it would also undermine the court's jurisdiction. So paragraph 3 tells us, this is the big argument here. Judge, the court should appoint a special master. And this is, again, the reply to the response. So it's the final word. They're saying all of this stuff in totality. Let me summarize. As to the actual issue currently at hand, Judge, the appointment and the responsibilities of a special master, the government effectively demands that this court stand down from even considering this modest step. Very insulting. They write, first, the government has publicly announced through its response and its recent notice that in a moment of astonishing efficiency, it has completed the filter review team and shared what the filter review team deemed non-privileged with the investigative team. And it's also currently facilitating a classification review of the material seized in the search. In other words, even after this court issued its preliminary order providing notice of its preliminary intent to appoint a special master, the government has expeditiously facilitated an Office of the Director of National Intelligence and a review of those documents that Trump intends to challenge as seized in violation of the Fourth Amendment and the Presidential Records Act, and that's subject to return to Trump under the federal rules of criminal procedure. A lot there, but let's break this down here. They're saying, my goodness, Judge, they said that they had all this real hard work to do at really packing this all together. They got all these boxes and they need to, really, urgently go through this, and they need to make sure that they've got an inventory because these documents are really, really important. But very conveniently, as soon as the judge said, I might appoint a special master, man, they really flew through that rapidly, didn't they? They got it all done like lickety split. Uh-oh, we got somebody who's going to come in here and watch us do this. Looks like we're pulling all-nighters, boys. Get the coffee, get the donuts, break out Melania's underwear. We're going hard tonight until these boxes have been rummaged through. In fact, they've got so much done that they're even sending all of this over to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. They're going to do a damage assessment on this thing, even though they didn't do one of those for Hillary, right? Remember when she deleted all those emails? Nothing there. They say, wow, very, very shocking how quickly you guys can move when you have to get something done. Amazing. Second, the government now has the temerity to argue that any involvement by a special master will, quote, interfere with the now, quote, ongoing intelligence community review of the materials. Never has an argument against, quote, interference better underscored the need for judicial involvement. All of this in context of a unilateral filter team operation that to this date has never made any contact with counsel for Trump. So the filter team that's supposed to be distinguishing between privileged documents and non-privileged documents doesn't even know what the lawyers are, who the lawyers are, never even talked to them. May not even know who their assistants are or who any of their, let's say, third-party resources are, right? Remember, for example, in the Michael Sussman trial, he worked for a company called Perkins Coie. Well, what happens if Perkins Coie has a bunch of subcontractors, essentially, that they use called Fusion GPS, who go out and do a bunch of work? Does the ODNI, does the FBI, does the DOJ, do they know all of these tentacles? Are they rummaging through Trump emails and Trump lawyer letters and all this stuff and not able to know that it's privileged because they haven't even reached out to the lawyers? They say, this is amazing. How can they know what's privileged if they've never even made any contact with our own lawyers? They call it another historic first for the DOJ. Amazing. Left unchecked, Judge, the DOJ will impugn, they will leak, they will publicize selective aspects of their investigation with no recourse for Trump, but to somehow trust the self-restraint of the currently unchecked investigators. That's putting it mildly. Unchecked investigators. Okay, we've talked about the literal evidence that the FBI has concocted and tried to pass off as legitimate. Trump's defense, they say, while the DOJ may have succeeded in taking a partial filter to their rummaged proceeds, the need for a special counsel, special master remains in place. Assuring access by Trump's counsel to the seized materials, sharing an actual, parentheses, detailed inventory, and making independent attorney-client privilege assessments and making executive privilege determinations are all responsibilities that are best served by the appointment of a special master team. And we can see the rest of this is talking about the deficiencies of the privilege team and others. Let's pick up the speed. We'll fast forward through a lot of this. You can see we're going to see some heavy case citations here, but they're going to give us some more details. Okay, Judge, look, you can see this is paragraph 3. We've got subparagraph A. Why do we need a special master? Subparagraph A. Well, one big reason, your so-called deficiency or the so-called privilege review team that they have set up to make sure they're doing a great job, not all that good. They say, Judge, contemporaneously with the issuance of the search warrant, Judge Reinhardt authorized a privilege review team and their related procedures for handling all of these materials, but they did it ex parte, which means they did it without Trump or anybody involved in this. So we don't know anything that they're doing. They say no effort was made by the judge or the government to try to contact Trump after the execution of the search warrant. They never got our opinion on the adequacy of the privilege review team. And we never had any say or any opinions on the procedures for the potential privilege review by this review team. And they say, Judge, now on this basis, right, there could be all sorts of pretty systemic and catastrophic problems with this. As evidence, we took a look at the receipt for the property. The teams that seized the boxes, they describe them as follows. 3 classified documents. They went through Trump's desk and they found everything. We talked about this previously. The passports that they got were included with other things that were collectively stored with the classified documents. So remember, they opened up the desk drawer. They said, oh, there's a bunch of stuff in here. Like this, sounds like this. A bunch of crap in there, right? We all have one of those. And there were, classified marking. What does that mean? Well, the way the search warrant was drafted, it means you get the whole desk, basically. Anything that was contained in that drawer, you get. Anything that was next to the drawer, you get. Anything that was stored with or amongst the drawer, you get. And so we were making the point previously, you might as well just take the whole office, right? Any box, any sort of container in that office. And basically that's what they did, right? So the warrants were so broad that, anything, right? So when you, like that one photo we saw, I don't know if that was all the classified materials in there, right? Or if that's all the pages in there, all the individual markings layered on top of one another. They walk out with 15 boxes, but it's really like half of a box or a third of a box of problematic materials. But because they seize the passports and the stapler and the scotch tape as well, right? It's a bunch of boxes. We don't know. And we can't see because the boxes only say A21, A35, A37. Nobody knows. And they're saying they took everything, including his passport. They seized the contents of the desk drawer that contained the classified records. And in doing so, in a haste to avoid any judicial oversight, the government has not only completed the filter team and the review, but the investigative team has also accepted those delineations and fully reviewed the remaining documents. Right? So we didn't get to challenge their decisions. This is privilege, this is not. But we can say that it is good enough and our decisions are competent enough that we can turn it over to the investigation team. The government's filter team already completed the work. They told us all about this. There was an authorized protocol in place. They searched certain areas. They invalidated their own procedures. They're saying the government has provided very little information about where in the movement's residence in Trump's place the seized materials originated. Where did you get all this from? It's not, their procedure said, you got to tell us where you got it from. They haven't told us where they got it from. So Judge, this team is deficient. They're not following their own rules. And they say that's a problem for us. It makes it unclear how many of the seized materials were actually reviewed. And they can continue on. As we continue down another argument, they're saying they've got a proposal for the duties of the special master. And they actually give us some sort of rules, right? And they say, here, this is what we think this person should do. Regulate the proceedings, take appropriate measures to assign duties, conduct evidentiary hearings, record evidence, and they give us some of the details on how that should work. They say we're open to certain conditions proposed by the government. If you appoint somebody, Judge, appoint somebody from a list of proposed candidates, no problem. We agree. We'll work with them on that. We also agree, Judge, that appropriate deadlines are okay. So we can shorten some of these decisions and we want to preserve everything. They're okay with all of that. But they do say, some of the other conditions don't serve our interests. And they say that the special master should, in fact, designate batches of documents for review. And basically, what's happening here is the special master is supposed to basically take a big box of documents, sort of like what we do with our mail, right? I don't know how you do this with your mail, but my mail comes in and, usually sits in a giant pile for about a month. But then I go through garbage, got to do something with it. Garbage, got to do something with it. Garbage, got to do something with it, right? Same thing here. Privileged, not privileged. Privileged, got to do something very special with that because it's very sensitive. And so this is all the special master is trying to do, and they're sort of delineating some of the rules and how that would all work, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But in conclusion, Trump's defense team tells us, Judge, previously, the Attorney General found an unrelated opportunity to announce that we at the DOJ, this is Merrick Garland, we at the DOJ hold ourselves to the highest ethical standards to avoid even the appearance of political influence at the department. But they say, the basic factual components of the issue before this case implicate that notion head on. A search warrant has been executed at the home of a president. It was conducted in the midst of a standard give and take between a former president and NARA regarding presidential library contents. And with the Trump literally allowing DOJ lawyers and FBI investigators to come to his home and provide security advice. Soon after, and for the first time in history, an attorney general took to the podium to announce a willingness to unseal a warrant and a property receipt, while eventually and reluctantly turning over a heavily redacted document that is more black than white. Even yesterday, the government's response gratuitously included a photograph of allegedly classified materials pulled from a container and spread across the floor for dramatic effect. The government pretends these are not historically important moments, telling the court that not only does it object to a special master, but that Trump should have no opportunity to challenge any aspect of this behavior and decision-making. They say the rules exist for a reason, and Trump respectfully asks that this court ensure enough fairness and transparency, even if accompanied by sealing orders, to allow Trump to legitimately and fulsomely investigate and pursue relief under the rules. A fair-minded DOJ that truly embraced the highest ethical standards would and should agree. Signed by Lindsay Halligan, James Trusty, Evan Corcoran, all submitted to the court in Florida. 19 pages submitted August 31st, 2022. And that is the big last final word from Donald Trump before we got to the oral arguments. That's what they were arguing about today. That's essentially what Trump's team was proffering forward. We know that in court, there were some additional individuals who were there that we had not seen previously. Making up Trump's team, we've got Christopher Kise, and he filed a notice of appearance. Here's what that looks like. He submitted this into the court, says, hello, Your Honor, and dear court, notice of appearance. Please take notice that Christopher Kise enters his appearance on behalf of Donald Trump. Send all your other stuff to my office at ckise.net. Very simple entry. He's there. We also know that this gentleman is Jay Bratt. Jay Bratt over is representing the U.S. Department of Justice. He's the chief of the counterintelligence and export control section. A little bit of information for him. He previously served as the deputy chief of the national security section over at the District of Columbia, of course. Guantanamo Review Task Force. And, well, there you have it there. He's a graduate of Harvard Law School. Don't you just love it? Amazing. It always happens. Everywhere it turns up without fail. Every single stinking time. The judge. This is Judge Aileen Cannon, born 1981. Quite young. She's on the Southern District of Florida. Says here, no, we'll donate later. No. Gosh, Wikipedia. All right, let's just enter it in. Bother me later. And we'll just get that out of the way. Great, thanks. They're going to send me an email reminder. Perfect. All right. So got that. Now support your local Wikipedia commies. All right, so here's this judge. Judge Aileen, on April 29, 2022, President Donald Trump announced his intent to nominate her. On May 21, she was nominated, confirmed by the Senate. Nomination reported out of committee, 16-6 vote. Senate voted 56-21 to confirm her. Now, of course, big notable case. You can see a little bit of backstory there, but that's the judge. She's the individual who is presiding over the proceedings today. And because this is federal court and we don't get a lot of details, we can't rip any audio or video, we're jumping over to Politico today, an article drafted by Josh Gerstein, Cheney, and Nicholas Wu, who I believe were actually there in court or in the media room at the court center. They tell us, federal judge indicated on Thursday that she is giving serious consideration to temporarily barring the Justice Department investigators from reviewing materials seized from Donald Trump's estate. Tells us U.S. District Judge Aileen Cannon suggested that she's mulling imposing that restriction while potentially allowing an exception for the intelligence community to continue reviewing the national security risks. So sounds like, yeah, I mean, there very well could be a special master appointed very soon. Cannon and her willingness to consider the restraints, even for a period of time, on prosecutors and investigators in the potentially explosive inquiry, is some of the first positive news for Trump and his attorneys in the saga that they say presents an acute legal threat. Justice Department attorneys, guys like Jay Bratt, who may have, I think, actually been there. Yeah, he was there. He repeatedly pleaded with Cannon, a Trump appointee, not to interrupt their ongoing criminal probe. Judge, we have an ongoing investigation here, and if you appoint a special master, we're not going to be able to do our job, and there are national security implications here that could jeopardize national security. Emphasizing that the search warrant executed on August 8th was clearly valid and lawfully authorized to obtain evidence of 3 significant federal crimes, he's quoted as saying. Justice Department attorneys push back sharply against any limits. They say, Judge, if you disrupt our criminal investigation, this is going to cause big problems. Cannon said she was inclined to issue an order to allow the outside review of the materials. This was taking place over the course of a 90-minute hearing that featured arguments from both sides. Jay Bratt said, Judge, listen, Trump is not even the president anymore. And because he's not the president, he doesn't have any right to take those documents. And he did not have the right to take those documents. But he took them when he was president, is the point. He moved out with them. He didn't take presidential documents when he was not the president. He says he was unlawfully in possession of them. This plaintiff does not have an interest in the classified and other presidential records. Well, that's up for debate. Cannon signaled concern about a couple of instances in which the investigative team had flagged potentially privileged materials that was not screened out by the filter team. So the judge says, well, okay, Mr. Bratt, you're saying I shouldn't appoint anybody to review this stuff, but it seems like you're not doing that great of a job. You've got all of these incidents, as the defense, Trump's defense is pointing out, where you've got these privileged materials that don't seem like they're being handled appropriately. What say you? You know, Trump's probably not president in those arguments. The judge gave no indication that she planned to limit the privilege claims that Trump could lodge in a still to be determined review process. How do you sort through these things? What happens if she does appoint a special master? How do you then dissect it all? That suggested that she could impose a special master with the broad purview to screen documents for any potentially subject to executive privilege. This comes despite the DOJ's arguments that no such claim could ever be upheld in this context. A Bratt deputy, somebody who worked over there at the DOJ, said, Judge, Your Honor, it would be unprecedented for the executive to be able to successfully assert a privilege against the executive branch. But the judge said, you know, I think you guys are overreading these Supreme Court precedents on this executive privilege stuff. The judge suggested former presidents may retain some element of executive privilege over their papers, and it isn't clear whether a current president can simply nullify that in all cases. Biden can just say, oh, sorry, Trump, bye-bye, you're in the dumpster now, right? And you go, what? Don't you, as the president, carry out, like, don't you have sort of a thank you for doing the job? Like, you carry some of those privileges with you? Or are you just like a dead wolf that you just feast upon? Cannon says, I'm not sure it's as cut and dried as you'd suggest there, Edelstein. Cannon issued no immediate ruling on the special master issue and says, yeah, I'm going to issue a written order, which we don't have yet. She did indicate that she plans to unseal more documents related to this dispute. Good. If Cannon ultimately issues an order acceding, they say, granting Trump's request, it could cause significant disruption to the DOJ, says Bratt. Although the DOJ warned that such a disruption would also harm the intelligence community's review of the documents, Cannon said, no, I think we can have a potential carve-out to allow the review to continue, even while the DOJ lacks access. All right, so in other words, we're going to say, DOJ, you know all those boxes you seized? They're not your boxes anymore. Give them over to the special master. They're literally, take them out of your office and put them in theirs. And if you want access to those documents, you go through a procedure. Same with Trump's people. Special master's in charge of all of this stuff. And they said, well, Judge, I mean, the ODNI is literally rummaging through this right now. I mean, they're trying on all sorts of brassieres and stuff. So what happens now? And they said they can still try on their brassieres. They just got to do it at the office of the special master. I can carve out an exception for them. No problem. Cannon didn't press Trump's team about the former president's claim to have declassified many of the materials, but she did pause to correct Bratt when he called the documents classified rather than marked as classified. Oh, boy. That's good stuff. Bratt says, Your Honor, I mean, Trump had dozens of classified documents in there. And the judge said, up. Hold on there, buddy boy. marked as classified, I think is what you mean. And Brat said, well, Judge, we treat them as presumptively classified, okay? We would not turn them over to somebody who does not have the appropriate clearances, is what he says. Trump's team, however, said that they were requesting access to all of the seized materials, and they're going to lodge all the potential privilege claims that they have. Trump's attorneys repeatedly underscored the historic nature of the investigation into Trump and insisted that this is not a run-of-the-mill case about mishandled records. Christopher Kise, the newest lawyer, says, Judge, this is not a case about some Department of Defense staffer stuffing military secrets into a bag and sneaking them out in the middle of the night, okay? This is a big deal. This is a former president. And we know, we talked about this previously, my goodness, that they actually got this search warrant after they did it a phone call over WhatsApp on the judge's review. I listened to this complaint from Special Agent so-and-so over WhatsApp. It's like, was he in the bathroom when he was listening to that? What? Trump lawyer James Trusty argued that the government's posture toward Trump's misconstrues the role of the Presidential Records Act, which contemplates a give-and-take negotiation between former presidents and the National Archives over the retention of some records, and includes no criminal enforcement mechanism. And how can you have a criminal search warrant if there's no criminal enforcement mechanism in the original statute? They're trying to criminalize the judicially unenforceable Presidential Records Act, Judge, says Trusty. Says that Trump regularly used Mar-a-Lago as a home and an office while he was president, okay? So it was secure enough for him when he was the president. I mean, he was down there all the time, right? And they make the president and his office mobile to follow the president. So it was secure for 4 years. And now it's like the most unsecure place ever? Trusty also repeatedly noted that the law gives a president the ability to designate some White House records as personal, which is what we debated at length over the Clinton sock drawer case, which removes them from the strictures of the act. That decision can't be reviewed by any court, he argued, apparently referring to that case. A series of rulings from federal courts in Washington rejecting challenges by, remember, Judicial Watch. They sued. They wanted Clinton's video recordings or audio recordings, and they said you can't have them. Why? Clinton said, oh, those are personal records. They're not presidential. They don't belong in the archives. They belong in my sock drawer with a lot of the other things that I have, which we can't talk about here. It's a family show. But this is, now apparently not the law. I mean, Clinton had the benefit of the doubt. He could say, those are my recordings. And the court said, rightfully, who are we to debate that? You want me, a lower level district judge, Amy Berman, to come in here and say, sorry, Bill Clinton, you have to give all these records back. You were only the former president. But now I get to decide what is what? Like, that's the type of structure you want, that type of oversight? It's nonsense. It's a separation of powers problem. Big time. Unenforceability problem, a jurisdictional problem. It doesn't make any logical sense at all. But that's the argument they're making here. However, they write, designation of some records as personal or political have typically been made by a president or his aides while he's in office. Once the term is over, they say, those determinations are made by the archives. Okay, so this is literally a library book return argument, right? Somebody said, those are my books. They say, no, they're not. They're ours. They're yours. It's a timing thing. It's a document thing. They're fighting over library book policies, and they're wrecking the country over it. Cannon, who was confirmed about a week after Trump's defeat, indicated last week she was inclined to grant Trump's request. Prosecutors said, Cannon, Judge, if you do appoint a special master, that person's authority should only be confined to doing a fresh look for certain things. And they shouldn't be allowed to turn over everything. Court session on Thursday also drew unusual attention for reasons beyond this. They say that on Tuesday, department used a filing in the case to air claims that Trump falsely asserted problems with their allegations. These guys write that prosecutors bolstered their argument by including a photo, and Trump responded to a lot of this on Twitter. On Thursday, Trump lawyers faced the delicate task of trying to convince a judge to appoint a special master while trying to lock Trump into future claims. First public appearance by Kise, veteran litigator in connection with the case. used to be Florida's Solicitor General, argued before the Supreme Court, longtime advisor to Republicans, including Ron DeSantis, Rick Scott, and Charlie Crist. Most Trump lawyers were quiet. Kise briefly offered a response after the oral arguments. Mr. Kise, how'd it go? He said, it went well, flashing a thumbs up to a Trump supporter who predicted the former president would prevail. He's like looking over his shoulder with his MAGA hat, winking at him, thumbs up, winking at him. It went well, kid. Stay in school. Evan Corcoran, one of Trump's other lawyers in the suit, dodged questions from reporters about whether he had hired an attorney of his own, a reference to reports that some people involved in the false certification are being arrested now. And Trump, of course, responded to this, which we will get into. But that was the update on the Trump search warrant case, oral arguments. And I wanted to just take a quick look at the court docket before we jump into reaction from Donald Trump, because he had a lot to say about all this. But as we can see, this is the actual docket from the Trump versus United States case. And on our morning walk and talk, we talked about what's happening with all the media crashing into this case. And I wanted to just show you this just to show you like the volume of this. But here, let's take a quick look and see if we can tease out who is here. Donald Trump filed his response. We just covered that. We read that one here today. And we've also read the notice of appearance from his newest lawyer. But now take a look at this, right? Everybody's skidding in here. Here, 57, the Palm Beach Post. 56, we've got ABC is in the house. Dow Jones as well. Another one from ABC. Several notice of appearances from them. This one is the Associated Press. We've got Bloomberg. We've got CNN, EW Scripps, NBC Universal, all piling in here. Same thing, multiple lawyers, CBS on that one. And you can just see, right? The list goes on and on. Basically, every single media entity is crashing in here. They all hate Donald Trump. They all couldn't wait for Trump to be out of the American limelight. They couldn't wait till he was off Twitter, until nobody started watching their news shows anymore, until the Washington Post had to start firing people. They all love Trump. They want Trump all the time. And now they're all skidding in there to cover the case. So that's the update on Donald Trump and the most recent oral arguments that took place out of Mar-a-Lago. And now we got to talk about Trump's reaction to this, because, man, he hit the phones pretty hard. We're going to get this one queued up, and we'll dive through this. A lot of clips on this one, so a lot less reading from me, which is always good news. But here is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is now responding to the leaked photo, or the officially released photo that came out from the FBI that was staged, that sort of concocted a bunch of evidence to make it look like Donald Trump was grossly mishandling all sorts of detailed classified information. And after oral arguments where they're debating about the appointment of a special master, Donald Trump hit the phones and had a lot to say in response to this. In response to the photo, remember the original photo that we looked at was here, and we had all sorts of criticisms and critiques about this photo on prior shows and prior videos. But Trump is saying specifically that this is not how this was situated. This is not how this looks. This is not who I am and how I conduct my affairs in my office. Look at this. And he's got a lot to say. So remember that he's got his lawyers who are out there also hitting the airwaves. And so first, let's check in with Alina before we hear from Trump. And Miss Abba is going to tell us, she's going to say, hey, I've been to Trump's office like many times, and it doesn't look like this at all. Here she is.
Yeah, nowhere. What's happened is now they've put this picture out so that you would assume, and I am somebody who has been, and the press loves to talk about this, especially today. I'm somebody that has been in his office. I've seen it. This is not the way his office looks. They give you this appearance that you walk in and there's these top secret documents just strewn about. A, B, they don't understand. Something could be marked top secret, could be marked classified. The Presidential Records Act, he would have said this is declassified. It doesn't get a new marking all the time. He's left the office. It is a complete public spectacle, and I'm not really going to stand by it anymore. I personally have gotten intimidated. People have tried to intimidate me. It's not going to work. You can't just put a picture like this and say, look.
Did the FBI do that, or was that the way that room looked before they went in there? Do you have any firsthand knowledge?
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen the press today. I do have firsthand knowledge, as you know. I have been down there. I'm down there frequently. I have never seen that. I have never, ever seen that. That is not the way his office looks. Anybody that knows President Trump's office, he has guests frequently there. It's just a joke. They literally must have gone in and taken out documents they wanted, or cover letters as it is, and put it about so that the public believes that this is top secret documents that were on his floor. It's ridiculous. I can tell you personally, It's ridiculous. I've never seen that.
Right. So I guess their argument, maybe from the FBI, is that Trump had all of this stuff out just loosely scattered around the floor, and that anybody could come in and just walk away with America's top national secrets or something like that, right? And the response from many people says that this looks like it is staged. It's manipulated. It's moved around in order to give an effect, right? They actually have documents that are opened up. This document here has one page tucked behind the other page. And then they've got the Time magazine photo that they staged there, right? The whole thing was set up. Just like when you see those drug busts, they put the cocaine vertical so it looks bigger, right? They don't lay it down. You want to see it. Stack those $100 bills up. Put those guns up, baby. Let's see it. And that's exactly what they did here. Okay, but this is not a drug bust. This is the president's private residence, and these are all sorts of documents that have all sorts of justifications for being there, and they didn't, in my opinion, properly investigate it in any way, shape, or form. That regular back and forth that we talked about between Trump's lawyers and NARA seems like it was sort of a normal process that was working until they decided it wasn't, and it justified the raid of the president's home. Trump, of course, is responding to this as well. He's hitting the phones, and he was on with this individual saying, the photographs that the FBI released, they're not indicative at all of anything that happened in my office, and they tried to make me look like a slob, which is just something that I'm not at all. Here's Trump.
A lot of people think that when you walk into my office, I have confidential documents or whatever it may be, all declassified. But I had confidential documents spread out all over my floor. And like a slob, like I'm sitting there reading these documents all day long, or somebody else would be. It's so dishonest when you look at it. And so people were concerned because they said, gee, that's a strange scene. You look at the floor and you see documents, right? They have cover sheets of documents. No, they put them there, John, and they put them there in a messy fashion. And then they took a picture and they released it to the public. And this is what we're dealing with these people.
Very dishonest, making things look worse. Part of the conversation on this whole story is that Trump was mishandling classified information. Trump was involved in all sorts of problematic use of these documents that could have jeopardized American national security. And so he's sitting there in his office chair, just flipping through the mail, just throwing them right over the air, just documents right over his shoulder. Boring, next one, boring, next one. And the FBI actually set that up. Turns out Trump says that's not the reality. Now, Trump was also hitting some other shows. This came over from the Wendy Bell radio show, and so I encourage you to go check her content out. Here's Trump on the call with her, and they're speculating about, Mr. President, what were they doing in your residence? What were they looking for? Any thoughts on that? Anything in particular that they might have been after?
But I think they were looking for Hillary Clinton emails. I think they thought, and who knows, boxes full of stuff. I think they thought
you've got the goods.
Hillary Clinton, they were something to do with the Russia hub.
Right on.
They were afraid that things were in there, part of their scam material, because that's what they are, the scammers.
Agreed.
And they would think that things were in there having to do with, can you imagine Hillary?
Can you imagine, right? And he was making this point. Some of his lawyers were making this point. Why would the FBI sort of breach hundreds of years of precedent in order to go raid the former president's home? Is it something that they really want? I mean, if you can play the hypothetical, let's be skeptical or let's speculate about the worst. If they want to talk about nuclear codes or Trump is, colluding with the Saudis or he is in Putin's pocket or whatever, you can play that game in reverse, can't you? You can say, well, maybe Trump had all of the PP tape evidence that the Obama team used to try to implicate him in a Russian scam that was not true. Maybe it's the Sussman documents. Maybe it's Hillary Clinton email documents. Maybe it's any one of the illegal things that the FBI has done over the years, and Trump has all the receipts. If you want to play that game, you can do it. But the real way to do it would be to just show us what they've got. And they're not doing that. Why? Because it's much more effective for them to hide that from us. And then you fill in the blanks. Because for their base, they're going to fill it in with the biggest, scariest, worst monster that they can possibly think of. And they're going to try to exploit that as long and as hard as possible. Here's Donald Trump on over at the John Frederick show. And John Frederick asks him a question about those boxes and about sort of the moving boxes and says, Mr. Trump, Mr. President, did you just load those up in the back of your truck? Did you throw those boxes in your trunk on the way out to Mar-a-Lago when you left the White House? What happened there?
For a term, and then all of a sudden you're leaving and stuff gets packed up and sent.
Right.
All sorts of stuff. Mostly the boxes, pictures and newspapers and shirts and gear and, golf balls and it's a lot of stuff. When you're there for 4 years, it's a long time and it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And they sent down by, I believe it was sent down by GSA, the government. And the other thing, just to show you that secret, there was no secret. Did you see the pictures? They were standing outside of the White House, literally on the sidewalk, waiting for trucks to come in to take it. In other words, it's not like this was some sinister plot. They have pictures of guys standing outside. The box is literally outside. The sun is pouring down, and they're waiting for a truck. And
we watched those pictures, and we watched some video footage of that here previously on the show. I think he's talking about the footage that they actually referenced in, I think, one of the motions. Now, in one of those motions, remember, we were reading through the affidavit, actually it was, and there was a big redacted area, but I think we could piece out what they were talking about. And I think it was the photos, honestly. I think they're saying, the FBI is saying, we saw him take them out of the White House because of the photos. And Trump is saying, so they know where they are. They know what's going on. Their people were down at our office. I met with them. I said, whatever you guys need, you got it. And what is all this about? Stealing classified documents, all this narrative is just ridiculous, is what he says.
They have pictures putting them on the truck. There was nothing secret about it. There didn't have to be anything secret. And all declassified. But when you look at what they've done, and you look at even something like this, when you look at what they're doing to our country, it's hard to believe. And the people aren't going to stand for it, John. They're not standing for it. They're really angry. They're upset. They're sad, but they're really angry.
Very angry. I think he's dead right about that. People have a lot of questions about overdue library books and whether it is justifiable to conduct the raid of your political opponents in America over paperwork, essentially. And I'm seeing over here, Candy Gas over on Rumble says, I watched Wendy Bell's show. It was a great show. Everyone should her out. She's on Rumble. So yeah, check them out. Check Wendy Bell. Check John Friedrich out. They're obviously getting the former president on there. And so it's pretty amazing. Something we've had a lot of conversations about here is whether the Democrats' new tactics is something that is going to be used by Republicans should they take power. What happens when the GOP is in charge? Are they going to do these same things to the Democrats? Are they going to use the same tactics the Democrats are using on them? Is Biden's home going to be raided by the Republicans? Maybe. Trump is telling us they are setting a new standard after all.
They raided a house of a president, a former president, and setting a whole new standard for what's going to come later, I would imagine.
New standard.
We're like a third world nation, and they did it for political purposes. This is all done for political purposes. It has nothing to do with anything else.
I think he's dead right about that. 100% about political purposes, not about anything else. All of it is just paperwork. It's overdue library books, and they are throwing a fit over it. And they want the president to be scared away. They want to sort of overwhelm him, to castigate him to such a degree that the public moves beyond him, or to just discourage him from running again, just to sort of actually take him off the playing field in a way, using the levers of power in a way that immobilizes him. And we'll see if it works. Trump, at the end of the Wendy Bell show, was talking about a potential pardon for all of the January 6ers. Trump says, if I run, big if, and if I win, another if, I may consider pardoning all of the January 6th defendants, all of the people who were moseying around through the Capitol, who got charged with crimes, many of whom charged with assault crimes for doing things as stupid as throwing water bottles at officers, facing many years in prison. Ridiculous. Trump now confirming or hinting that he may, in fact, pardon these individuals should he have the opportunity.
Don't care about anything. They just, and you see what they're doing with the sentencing. And I will tell you, and I'm looking at it very carefully. I've studied it. I study cases, and contributions should be made. We have to do that because, you know, they have some good lawyers. But even the good lawyers, the
can't
judges,
beat fraudulent judges.
You get before.
Amen.
And D.C. Circuit Court juries. What are you going to do about any of it?
You get some of these judges that are so nasty and so angry and mean.
And the jury.
And I will tell you, I will look very, very favorably about full pardons.
Wow.
If I decide to run and if I win, I will be looking very, very strongly about pardons.
Amen.
Full pardons.
Well deserved.
I think that's probably going to be the best, because even if they go for 2 months or 6 months, I mean, you know, they have sentences that go a lot longer than that.
Years and
but
years.
We'll be looking very, very seriously at full pardons, because we can't let that happen. What's happened here, and I mean full pardons with an apology to many.
Full pardon with an apology to many. And I think there are many who deserve that, honestly. I think there's a lot of people who are good people who got caught up in this. They are being labeled as dangerous insurrectionists because of political animus from an opposing political party, not because of any criminality that they engaged in. And that's disgusting. I mean, that is the most disgusting thing in America, to have people politically prosecuted. And that's happening every day under the guise of saving American democracy. So I would absolutely love to see a pardon there. And I would love to see just the immense salt flow from everybody. But we'll see if that happens. We will, of course, continue to follow it. And we've got another segment. We've got a lot of reaction. And then we're going to check in. Oh, is Joe Biden speaking? I forgot. It's after 5. Let's see if this guy's, is he saying anything out there? Oh, he is speaking. Let's listen. Let's listen for like a quick second. Let's just listen.
Fraud. I will not stand by and watch elections in this country stolen by people who simply refuse to accept that they lost.
Oh, gosh. Oh, he's mumbling all over the place.
I will not stand by and watch the most fundamental freedom in this country, the freedom to vote, and have your vote counted and be taken from you and the American people. Look.
Sold the nation.
As your president, I will defend our democracy with every fiber of my being, and I'm asking every American to join me.
No. 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 No.
Throughout our history, America's often made the greatest progress coming out of some of our darkest moments, like you're hearing that bullhorn.
Somebody's protesting.
We can and must do that again. And we are.
Somebody's protesting back
MAGA
there.
Republicans look at America and see carnage and darkness and despair. They spread fear and lies. Lies told for profit and power.
I can't hear what he's saying, but
America.
He's screaming something.
An America with an unlimited future. An America that's about to take off. I hope you see it as well. Just look around.
All right, we're gonna cut this. There's nothing useful here. I think we'll cut it. Yeah, should we cut it? Yeah, we'll cut it. Let's go back to the show because we got a lot of other stuff to get to today. Because there's still, well, let's see. What should we hit today? Yeah, we got two full segments here, and yeah, let's start here. Let's go here. Let's start with the charges. Right, we're having a lot of conversations about charges, and we'll hit the charges. Democrats react to the newly released FBI photo showing Trump's floor with documents splayed all over the place. And they're just shocked. They're outraged. They say that what they have seen is atrocious. And guys like this individual here named Andrew Weismann are just really pleading with Merrick Garland. They're saying, look, he absolutely has to be prosecuted. And if he's not prosecuted, well, America is basically over and there's not much we can do about it. And so we'll start here with him today and listen to what his sort of explanation is for why Trump absolutely must be indicted. Then we'll check in with Klobuchar and the others.
And then obviously undermining in a democratic election is off the charts in terms of seriousness. There's nothing more fundamental
off the charts
to our democracy than the crimes that are being investigated in the January 6th case. And you're seeing many so-called lower level people being prosecuted in Washington, D.C. So the idea that if they could make a case against the leader of that kind of crime, that the leader would get off seems unfathomable and untenable for Merrick Garland to reach that conclusion.
Unreasonable, untenable for Merrick Garland to reach that conclusion. What happens if Merrick Garland doesn't prosecute him? This guy, he's going to be so upset. I mean, honestly, he's on MSNBC basically every day. He's like, Trump's going to get indicted. He's been saying this, I don't know how long, but a long time. People like him have been saying stuff like this, I don't know, 6 years now. Have you seen the meme of Trump going around where it's like in 2019, they're going to get him. 2020, they're going to get him. 2021, they're going to get him. 2020, they're going to get him. It always goes, it's never ending. All the way back to 2016, 2015, the list goes on and on. Everybody wants him indicted. And I don't know that Merrick Garland has an off-ramp. Does he have a choice? He's also hearing this type of stuff from senators. It's not just Andrew Weismann, who's over on MSNBC. Here is Senator Klobuchar, who's going to say, this is atrocious.
What I saw from the last 2 days was absolutely atrocious. We always knew that he had taken these documents home. We knew he had not given them all back. But what I found out this week was that on June 3rd, his lawyer said, that's it. We've given you all the documents. And then the obstruction clearly continued to the point where we now learn that of these 13 boxes, there were over 100 classified that he still had, including documents that were in his desk. These documents, Joe, were in Mar-a-Lago, a place where you rent out croquet sets and badminton nets.
Croquet sets and badminton nets, right? You see where this language is going? Very curious, because the president was there for 4 years when he was the actual president, didn't have a big issue at that time.
And golf carts. These are the nation's top secrets that could reveal intelligence sources and put people at risk in the field, patriots who are simply trying to protect the security of our country.
Yeah, so absolutely atrocious, right? So it's guys like Weismann, it's MSNBC, it's Amy Klobuchar, it's all sorts of individuals, and they're not getting any pushback at all from the Republicans. I mean, here is Cocaine Mitch, the turtle. He is the lead Republican, I guess, leader, something or other. And here he is asked again about Trump and Mar-a-Lago and what is happening at the DOJ, right? Which is the bigger issue here. It's not even necessarily about Trump and his records. It's what the DOJ is doing. And the leader of the Republicans in the Senate can't be bothered to make a statement about it. Here is Mitch.
A chance to review or anything from this morning, the DOJ's report?
I don't have any observations about that.
I don't have any observations about that. Don't ask me about Trump. What a joke! He's supposed to be representing Republicans in the Senate. We have a lot of issues with the DOJ and the FBI and what they're doing to the prospective nominee. I have no observations on that. I'd rather talk about floods. Okay, right? And they wonder why Republicans are not looking so hot in some of the more recent polls, right? Because they are running around and fleeing like little children Republicans. Here we have Bloomberg now telling us that there may not be any charges coming forward. Many Democrats want Donald Trump indicted. Indicted now, indicted hard, indicted fast, but it may not happen before those midterm elections. DOJ now saying that they may wait because they've got a 60-day policy to not file indictments against political enemies in the months leading up to an election. Here's Bloomberg reporting.
So we did just get some breaking news here. The Department of Justice is likely to wait to past the midterm elections to reveal any Trump charges. Joining us now is Bloomberg's Josh Wingrove to walk us through a few more of the details. Josh, over to you.
Yeah, thank you for bearing with our technical adventures here. So
no problem. Happens to me all the time. You're okay.
What is traditionally a 60-day clock that they wouldn't announce charges that close to an election. That would be in about September 10th, in and around there, that kind of range. So what our colleague Chris Stone is reporting is that we do not expect charges to come in either the documents case that we've been hearing quite a bit about that relates, of course, to whether confidential and classified top secret documents left the White House in an unauthorized Lives Matter, and separately a probe into the actions around the January 6th events at the Capitol and what, if anything, Trump and people around him did to encourage that or not intervene to quell it once it started rolling off. And so those two things together, what our colleague Chris Stone was reporting is that the charges will not come in the 60-day period, and they won't come before, which means it won't be until after the elections that we will hear if there are charges or not. That, of course, raises the question that the potential for charges will hang over, in part, these midterm cycles.
So, doesn't sound like Christmas is coming for the Democrats anytime soon. They have been waiting around their, I don't know what they celebrate, but they have been waiting for this to come. And of course, the DOJ is going to really milk this thing. Look, if you're going to break historical precedent, if you're really going to go after your political opponents, you don't want to wrap this thing up quickly. You want to milk it as long as possible. Really just let it linger out there as best you can, and then drop it when it's most effective, probably around the time Trump announces or right after that or whatever, right? They'll use it strategically. They're not just going to hurry it along, because that would not be the best use of their political power. And we'll continue to cover that, and I hope you do subscribe and join us as we do, as well as dropping a like, my friends, if you're out there in the chat. I'd love a like if you're there, if you see it, if you're like my thumbs, if your thumbs feel like they need to move on your phone, just, exercise, hit that like button. That would just be incredible, because we've got one final segment left, and then we'll check in on our president. Is he done? Is he still going? Let's see. Is he still going?
Then age is still.
He's still going.
Say, we, all of us here, we kept the faith. We preserved democracy.
They must have given him something tonight.
We heeded our worst.
How many people are there?
We heeded not our worst instincts, but our better angels.
Let's count the people here for a minute. How many people were just there? Did you see that? Looked like it was outside the White House. Is he? Oh, he's in Pennsylvania, right? He flew over to Pennsylvania, so I don't really know where he's speaking at. Crowd's pretty darked out. Well, I can't really see. Bad camera. All right, so that's the president.
That's we must always be. I have no doubt, none, that this is who we will be, and that we'll come together as a nation that will secure
Is he
our
wrapping
democracy,
it up?
that for the next 200 years we'll have what we had the past 200 years, the greatest nation on the face of the earth. We just need to remember who we are. We are the United States of America, the United States of America.
He just called MAGA Republicans.
And may God protect all those who stand watch over our democracy. God bless you all. Democracy. Thank you.
Democracy. All right. So you can see some people there. Not a lot. Actually, that's a pretty small crowd. Look at this. It looks like we got a empty wheelchair over here. That's a pretty small crowd. Hilarious. There's like nobody there. All right. You got like this row's like 1, 2, 3 people deep. So 3 times, I don't know, 150, 200 people there. Hilarious. Out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Hysterical. What a joke. What a joke of a president. Okay. Now, we didn't hear a lot of that. Obviously, he was screaming and lecturing at most of America. Let's see how long this speech was. All right. So he started here about 24. And then he wrapped up at, it's about 24 minutes. Yeah, about 24-minute long speech. So, wow, okay. So they gave him some uppers or something. But did you hear his last closing sentence about this being a united America? Joe Biden saying, united America, we all have to come together and be united. That's very curious, because Joe Biden has said a lot of things differently. Joe Biden in the White House reversing course, not using that aggressive extremist MAGA language anymore, quite as aggressively as they were. Remember this clip from the president. Here, Biden came out and he said the following. He said Biden was calling the GOP semi-fascist and saying the GOP ideology was very analogous to, I guess, the Nazis.
The MAGA Republicans don't just threaten our personal rights and economic security. They're a threat to our very democracy. They refuse to accept the will of the people. They embrace political violence.
What?
They don't believe in democracy.
So he said all extremist Republicans, right? MAGA Republicans has been the language. We've seen it on the president's Twitter account, and we've even heard it from Karine Jean-Pierre. This is what she said. The White House press secretary, Karine, told us that Joe Biden, in a prior statement that he just made, had been very consistent on this point, has said that extremist Republicans are in fact dangerous. Here is her clarifying his prior statements.
The president thinks that there is an extremist threat to our democracy.
Extremist threat.
The president has been clear as he can be on that particular piece when we talk about a democracy, when we talk about our freedoms. The way that he sees is the MAGA Republicans are the most energized part of the Republican Party.
Let's rewind that. Who is she talking about? Who are the good Republicans? Who are the bad Republicans? Who's allowed to be a part of society and who's not? Specifically, who are you describing here, Karine? Let's listen one more time closely.
Piece when we talk about a democracy, when we talk about our freedoms. The way that he sees is the MAGA Republicans are the most energized part of the Republican Party. This is an extreme threat to our democracy, to our freedom, to our rights.
Okay, the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, not talking about elected officials, not talking about Trump, talking about everybody, talking about the entirety of the people who supported Donald Trump. Very interestingly, just about a short day later, Karine Jean-Pierre comes out and she's singing a little bit of a different tune here. Now, rather than calling it all 80 million people who support Donald Trump, she says it's only the office holders. Listen to this little shift.
Go back to tonight's speech. Obviously, you said that the president's going to be calling out these lawmakers that are MAGA lawmakers in Congress. But you had 74 million people vote for Trump last time around. You said it's a small number that the White House believes are extremists. Can you give us an idea of ballpark? Are we talking a million of that 74 million? Are we talking about 1%, 20%?
How many are
bad?
bad?
I'm talking about specifically of MAGA office holders. That's what we're talking about. They're the ones I'm talking specifically. I already answered this question about how we
didn't
feel
say
like
office holders.
Nerve, right? When folks are saying that we're trying to be divisive or that we're talking about millions of voters, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about MAGA office holders.
I literally just played the clip, Karine. You did say it. Sorry. She's saying now it's only the office holders. It's not everybody else that she just said. She said Biden's been very clear on this, by the way. And in either one of these two clips that I just played, did you hear them talk about office holders at all? No, of course not, because she is lying, obviously. And here is another statement from her. And they're asking her specifically about this question because the press is wondering how they're going to get away with all of this language. And here is what Karine says in response to that.
What do you think the president's message tonight is for Americans who consider themselves Republicans or may still support the former president? Is there something in the speech directed to them?
Well, look, the president really does believe that this, that what he's going to talk about is something that many Americans are going to care about. It doesn't matter which side of the aisle that you sit at. When you think about the possibilities of our democracy, when you think about how we are going to fight to protect our rights, right, to protect our democracy, he thinks that's going to touch a lot of people. We have seen, somebody just talked about polling and how we see that many people are concerned about where our democracy is. I would argue that's probably across the board. And when we talk about
you're in charge,
we're talking
lady.
about a very small component of the American public.
Did you see that there? She's walking it back right now. She says, and by the way, also, we're talking about it's a tiny little sliver here, a little small contingent of America. It's not all the MAGA Republicans. Joe Biden was just threatening America, saying, unless you've got F-15s, you're in big trouble, right? Joe Biden said, if you have firearms out there, you Second Amendment lunatics, you think you can take me on? I'm Joe Biden. Joe Biden thinks he's like Tom Cruise with a helmet, call sign, Pedo Peter. Come fight me, America. Bring your guns. Joe Biden's out there flying around, saving America while he's shooting all of you down with your guns, your little pea shooters. He's in his F-15. Give me a stinking break. And now they're saying that they're reducing all these numbers? Oh, it's just a small, tiny sliver. That's not what they mean.
Right, we're talking about a very small component of MAGA Republicans in Congress. It's
not what they said.
That is something that they believe, right? But know, and the president believes and is optimistic that there are many Americans who want to continue to make sure that we uphold our democracy. And so that is something we're going to hear some hope about the direction of America and the future of America, building toward a more perfect union. That is something that we have heard throughout our history in this country, and so he's going to speak directly to them.
All right, so he did. He spoke directly to us, and he, I think, screamed at us, and he yelled at us all about unity. Problem is, his administration, his people, his own press secretary are the individuals who are screaming and shouting about extremist ultra-MAGA Republicans who are insurrecting America and going to be the end of all of us. And so that is Biden. Obviously, they're reversing course on that a little bit. We'll see if it continues or if it doesn't. Now, that is it for us on the day, my friends. It's time to hear from you. We had 4 full segments there, so we covered a ton of ground. And now we also even gypped a little bit of the president's statements. And so we got some reaction from you. And today we're starting over on YouTube. We just have a couple to get through quickly. Oh, shout out to Bear Ashby, who became a member. Welcome to Bear Ashby. Bear Ashby is going to get those morning walk and talks, which, of course, are a lot of fun over at our community at watchingthewatchers.locals.com and also over on YouTube. So if you're a YouTube member, this is sort of what you get. This is what we posted this morning. This is what we talked about this morning. Let's see what we talked about.
Hello, my friends.
What did we
happy
say?
Thursday and happy September.
Oh.
Brand new month smell.
Oh,
August
yeah.
went by very, very quickly. A lot of news in August. And I guess time flies when you're being rated, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You just sort of just blinking an eye and you're suddenly in the middle of a federal investigation and you didn't even know where it came from, weren't really expecting it.
Yeah, it's true. And August flew by, and September is going to fly by too, and we're going to have a lot more of those morning walk and talks. And so go check those out. Shout outs to Bear Ashby, who became a member, who's going to get those. Shout out to Tom Bills, who became a member, and CC Davis became a member. So welcome. We got some good members joining up. And don't be afraid to comment on those videos. The point of being a member is like you get to kind of meet your fellow commenters, so comment in there and get to know each other. Say good morning, good morning and happy September and it's fresh air and all that stuff. And so shout outs to the newest members. We also have Raider Gaines is here. He says, those staged photos are a good reason to release the surveillance video. I'm sure they will at some point. And that is going to be very strategic. But it's a great point, Raider Gaines. I think that there's going to be a lot more to come on this. And we will, of course, cover it. Zulu's in the house, says 7-month anniversary. Oh, my goodness, Zulu. And Zulu, I'm grateful that you're still here. I know you had to dip out for a little bit. And I hope that you're well. I hope that you're healthy and that you're living a good life. And I'm grateful that you're here and a part of our show. You've been around for a long time, my friend. It's a lot longer than 7 months, Zulu. Zulu's been around for, I don't know, since the beginning, basically. We're grateful for you, Zulu. All right, and so shout outs to Zulu. We also had Bear Ashby, who said, the FBI not showing because they have nothing. Yeah, I think that might be true. I think that might be true. It's going to be overdue library books. When I was in, middle school, I think we had the inserts in the books. I'm pretty sure we did. We had an actual library card, and you had to stamp the books. So that's basically what it is. Like Trump's punch card is not back in the slot and he got fined for it. And now they're going to open political prosecutions over that. Wild stuff. Question Everything is here. Says, pardon the J6ers. I just heard a bunch of liberal heads popping and loving it. Could you imagine that? I know. I mean, honestly, like if they did it, if Trump comes out and just says, let's say January 21st, he walks in. I'm back, America. First order of business. All the J6 stuff. Forgiven. Oh. Oh, my goodness. I don't even know what we would do here. I mean, it would just be like, I don't know. It would be a wild scene, man. It would be a lot of fun. Hopefully it happens. Chris Anchondo is here with a bunch of salt shakers. I don't know if those are for me or for other people who might be salty in the in the chat. Either way, there's going to be a lot of salt in America. We're all going to have our partaking, no doubt. Mark Maddox says, has anyone asked what docs Biden took when vice president? How about Senate records at the University of Delaware that they won't release? I think that's right, Mark. I think that this type of problem or activity is probably extremely common. Like, this is just a bureaucracy, okay? Just think of any bureaucracy that you've ever been a part of. Any size at all. Like, you know, any type of group project that you've ever been a part of. They're all a disaster. That's what this is. The U.S. government is just a giant group project. They're terrible at it. They're going to get D. The whole group is getting D minuses. Mark. I think you could easily pot, kettle, the whole thing to the end of the earth. And I'm glad that we're here to do that. Bear Ashby says President Trump will have words with them SOBs, is what Bear Ashby says. Shout out to Tom Tillis. Shout out to CC Davis. Shout out to Zulu, who is a member. This says has been a member for 8 months. Zulu says, I saw in the chat that he's been around since Arbery, which has been a long time. Long time, Zulu. A lot of changes around these parts, no doubt about it. All right, we're jumping over to locals. We're going to do a refresh on the thread, and we're going to see what we've got down here at the bottom. Scrolling to the very first page so that I don't miss anybody, which I sometimes do. Let's see what we've got here. Oh, we've got a lot of them. So TOS Forever, he says, thankful Thursday to you, Rob. Hopefully everyone at my Rumble app will work today. It didn't work yesterday. I know that I know what I need to change in my iPhone. Well, I hope it works, TOS. Hopefully you're there with us. This one came in from Former. He says, Rob, big boy. The FBI has prohibited agents from reporting to Congress complaints of internal FBI corruption. These Democrats are destroying our country, and they only give lip service to transparency and then muzzle the whistleblowers. The great unifier is nothing more than a punchline of a bad joke. I agree with you there. There's absolutely no unification happening. In fact, they are directly agitating. ZW Troll says it's probably the WEF causing destabilization. They want Americans to turn ignorant. They want everybody to just do business with all the big mega conglomerates, and they don't care about the world. I also agree with that one. Here, this one came in. Looks like a juicy one from Brian. Looks like this is an... Okay, we'll go through this one. He says, Brian says, so I was pretty anal about the classification system when I was on the ship, which is why I'm qualified to speak about it, you know. I was in the laity of government. I didn't watch the video, but I found this comment and had to rage about it. Somebody said, look at the photo. Many of the documents are marked as top secret. No documents are marked as declassified. And this commenter is like, yeah, see? We have Brian's response. He tells us, you have never worked with classified material. Merely stamping declassified doesn't make it so. There will be an entire library-esque cataloging system for most corporate classified material, and yet there are derivative and real-time classified material which are not necessarily cataloged when they're retained. But that's for everyone except the president, who from the executive branch decides the documents could even be classified. And then onward, he says, y'all never had any position in the world where you had to have been concerned about national security secrets. And you're all freaking out over cover sheets? None of us even know what those cover sheets were protecting. There's a lot of material which is classified secret, and yet it's general knowledge written into a classified program in order to understand it. Did you notice that you have no clue what you're talking about besides the sacred rules of government, which is run by the people? Never having to declassify anything, saying that they should be considered divine? Very highly classified documents. How would you know based on the photos alone? Good comment there, Brian. Yeah, I agree with that. Right? It's people hyperventilating about cover sheets and red fonts is what it is. Paul Me No says, miss me yet from Trump? Yeah. Southern Traveler says, Rob, so by leaking information and publicly parading photos of documents, does that make us feel safer that they're in the FBI's hands? No. I mean, I made this point yesterday. Who took the photos and what was the chain of custody for their cell phones and what software did they use to redact it? Did they throw it in Microsoft Paint or did they throw it in Adobe Photoshop or something? Right? All of those softwares have to be secured and isolated and not hackable and updated and all this crap, right? Or was it just some Yahoo taking a photo on his iPhone? How many did we see when they were in his closet? None so far. We haven't seen any. Rai Tia is here. Rai T says, hi, Rob. Thanks for allowing me to be a part of your community. Well, gosh, I'm thankful that you're here, Rai. I've been watching you from the UK for well over a year now. I've always had the sense you're a kind, decent man who always tries to do the best in any situation. Your generous welcoming of me to locals is yet another sign of that, and I'm grateful. I'm sorry I don't have much to say about the topic today, but I want to let you know in front of your loyal audience that I appreciate your commitment to building a community here. where we can speak about these topics, and your clear drive to achieve this has enabled you to overcome many barriers that have been put in your way. I won't claim to speak for anybody else, but I am confident I'm not alone in feeling very proud of you. Wow. For what you've created here on the internet and what you've conquered in your offline life. Thank you, Rob. Keep it up. Well, I'm going to just get emotional on that comment. I'm not even joking about that, right? That is, that's a very nice thing to say. And I'm grateful that you're here. And I really mean that. And I do, gosh, this is such a timely comment, because I've told many of you that I'm a part of an organization that I attend to every so often. And we had an event today, not an event. It's called a morning session. And we had a morning session today, and it's a group of people who are like, I am the tiniest, small little fish in this giant big pond. A lot of people are way more impactful. Okay, financially successful, sure, but impactful with their vision, their lives, what they want to do to leave this world in a better place. And today, something came up that really hit me hard. We were talking about, it sort of hit me. And the guy who runs this organization, if you want to look him up, his name is Joe Polish. The name of the networking organization is called the Genius Network. Okay, I'm a member of that. And we had an event today where it was an AMA, it was an Ask Me Anything with Joe Polish. He's the guy who runs this, and he is an amazing guy. And he was telling us, and Ryan, this is specific to your comment, right? Somebody asked him a question, this AMA, sort of, Joe, what's the most impactful thing that you do? This guy took a year sabbatical. He went out there and he did all sorts of stuff to, enlighten himself and all this. And, money's no object for these guys and so on. And he came back and he said, basically the basics, right? The things that really work are the basics: exercise, eating, nutrition. And we turned it over to this other guy who gave us this detail, because Joe said, well, I'm actually surprised that you would ask me that question. I actually want to hear from you. What do you say? You're the expert. And this guy is the guru on this topic, right? And the guy said, you know what? He said a couple things the first thing he told us that is going to extend your life is breathing appropriately, right? So breathing correctly. And I've been a big advocate of this on this channel for a long time. I talk about it on our morning walk and talks. The breathing technique that I use is 4-7-8 breathing. It's by Andrew Weil. You can look up on YouTube. It's 4 counts in, 7 counts hold, 8 counts out. Okay, but this is not the point. Do that, breathe right. It's just like eating, sleeping, exercising. You have to breathe appropriately, and we breathe out of our mouths. We don't breathe well. We have anxiety as a result of it. Anyways, that's not the point. Rai T, you said, you gave this community, and you're involved in it, obviously, a nice compliment about community. The second thing, in addition to breathing, that extends your life, okay, and what he said on today, and it stopped me in my tracks. He said it extends your life by 8 years. 8 years. Community. He said you've got to find a community. A group of people with like-minded interests, people who will motivate you or just hang out with you, just talk with you, just connect with you, share ideas and get feedback on it. He said people that don't have good communities, they drop dead 8 years earlier. And if you want a source on this, I'll tell you this guy's name. Let me share this with you. He was brilliant, and I'm basically going to buy everything that he's ever done as a result of this meeting. But this is who it was. Okay, Sachin Patel, and it looks like he's got a free book and programs and all this stuff. But he talked a lot about this, about living well and breathing and getting plugged in community. And so, I guess to tie this all back together again, right, it's mutually beneficial, my friend. Honestly, spending time with you, dissecting these ideas, unpacking all of these things, it requires me to be a better person than I would be otherwise. It requires me to perform better, to think more clearly, to have more empathy, to be less emotional, to be less reactive. And so, it's one of the most sort of rewarding things that I get to do is to spend time with you and to dissect these issues and to be a part of this, right? And as much as you may appreciate being here with us, I can't even tell you how much I appreciate being here with you. And so I'm just really grateful for that comment. And I think it really does matter. Some people might just swing by for a little bit of a live chat and stuff like that, but there's a deeper something there, whether you know it or not. Community, it extends our life, literally. Okay. So even if you're not a member with us or whatever, find that for yourself, whether it's a 12-step program or it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, whether it's a hiking club or it's your friends at school. Community is so stinking important. And they're trying to take that away from us. Don't you see that? They're trying to wreck that in our country by putting and pitting people against one another, and by locking us in our homes, and by making sure we can't travel, and by petrifying everybody that you can't even talk to other people without a mask on. You can't get connected to anybody because they're dangerous. They are wrecking community. And we can't let that happen, my friends. I'm grateful that you're here, Righty. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Cheryl says, I'm hoping Humpty Dumpty doesn't win tonight. Grandson has ninja-level debating skills. Waiting peacefully and patriotically for your show. Thank you, Cheryl. I'm glad that you're here. Yeah, Joe Biden, he's just going to mumble through his statement. We'll look at the clips. Maybe we'll play some clips tomorrow. I don't know. Heather says, you missed my comment yesterday. What a jerk. Facts Matter was sandwiched between my comments. I missed a comment. Oh, sorry, Facts. Sorry. I'm scrolling a lot. Sometimes I miss them. Says, you, Viva and Barnes and Pope Nick are all streaming at the same time tonight. Brutal pick, but you won. Whoa, that's nice. Do we do that? Do we all do that at the same time? That's kind of idiotic. We should probably tier those out. But I think that means I have to move. So I'm just a little minnow, compared to those guys' channels. So but we could do we could have like a Fox lineup or something. It's not like a Fox lineup, but like a lineup, Watching the Watchers at 2, Viva and Barnes at 4, Ricada at 6 or something. If we could do something like that, have a little network. Nick would never be in for that because, he's Nick. I watched a video of him yesterday. I was laughing my ass off, man. He cracks me up so bad. He was debating somebody. Who was that ponytailed guy he was debating over on his channel? It was hysterical. I was laughing so hard. He was tearing into this guy. If you haven't watched Nick debate this fool who was trying to get him canceled, you got to go do it. It was perfect. One of the best things. I was laughing hysterically. C. Reed is here. He says, thank you again for all you do for the fight for freedom. This is not fact checked, but it seems legit. It says from Clay County, with the combined salary of 87,000 new IRS agents, $81,000 a year, you could put a police officer, $55K, in every school in the nation, over almost 100,000, and still have 31,000 or 1 billion, 1.7 billion left over. Now they're not interested in safety or security. They're after you. Yeah, that's funny. Oh my gosh, you're kidding me. Alt lag, Duncan McLeod, and he's got himself a second. Are you kidding me? Did they strike Nick over that? What? Are you kidding me? Are you serious right now? Oh my gosh. For what? For the comment or for the debate? Oh my gosh. Oh, Savvy says, who knows? Oh my God. Okay, well, I'm going to go check. That's insane. Okay, they were debating. All right, well, this is the power of the community that we were talking about. Nick's on Locals, Nick's on Rumble. I would encourage everybody listening right now to go check out Nick's Rumble and Nick's Local. Let's figure out what they are. Does anybody know Nick Ricada's local link? I think we have it here. ricadalaw.locals.com. Please go check that out. ricadalaw.locals.com, and certainly go subscribe to Nick on Rumble. Pull both of those up. It must happen because that's ridiculous. And that, you know what? Oh my gosh. All right. So I'll opine about that to myself later. Thank you, C. Reed, for that comment. Heather says, it doesn't have to be Trump to do this one to someone else. Any president in the future can now use this as precedent. Never mind if they charge Trump or not. This has now made it easier to do all of this. I totally agree with you, Heather. Yeah, here is Kise just shared out the chat for Rekieta. We're going to pin that in the chat. Get over there on his Rumble. Pin that in the YouTube chat. That's outrageous. That makes me so stinking mad because I listened to it. I listened to the debate. Not the full 2-hour thing. I listened to, oh my gosh. I listened to it over on, I think, Divinity's channel. Yeah, that's where I think I listened to it. That's right. Divinity's channel probably also needs a plug because she captured that. Divinity Said is the channel that I think I watched that debate on. So I wonder if she pulled that. Yeah, she's got that on her channel. This channel here. She pulled this debate together, and you can see this is what everybody's watching. It was Nick Rekieta shreds Duncan MacLeod. That was on her channel. But if you listen to it, you know, it's a debate over terms of service, and this Duncan guy was basically demanding that Rekieta be thrown off the internet, right? He be canceled, he be censored. And Nick is defending himself. They're saying he said something that he didn't say, and now he's suffering a strike from it. So what a joke. What an absolute joke. All right. Like, I'm actually mad. Like, mad. All right. So let's go and check another, let's see what else we got here. Facts Matter is in the house. We got some comments to get back to. Here, Facts Matter says, any chance you found the time to watch Barnes's take on this? Curious on your thoughts. I can't clip the full 3 minutes, but here's a snippet from last night. So let's see what we've got here. What Mr. Barnes has to say for us here.
Actual subpoena is not what the media was representing. So the subpoena was issued to the office of Donald John Trump, to a specific entity. There's reasons why they did that. And the responder was the custodian of records for that entity. And so the custodian said, this is the records that I, as custodian for this entity, have in my possession at this time that are relevant to your subpoena. Then when they do a search of Donald Trump's personal residence, they find other documents. There is no necessary contradiction whatsoever between those two events. In fact, you would typically find more documents in searching an individual's personal residence than you would a corporate subpoena to a corporate entity for custodial records at that time.
Okay.
The reason the Justice Department was playing that game using the D.C. grand jury, it's absurd that we have a grand jury on this in the first place, but putting that aside, is because if they had subpoenaed Trump personally, actual subpoena, and it's not what the media was representing. So,
I'm sorry, that played again. So it restarted because it's a clip. So I think what he's talking, I think he's sort of splicing the subpoena, and he's splicing the certificate of compliance that was filed by the custodian of records. Okay, so remember, we actually read through all of that yesterday. We went through that custodian document in detail because it's a very important document. And I think what Barnes is saying is that by the custodian of records signing on to that, they're not actually out of alignment, incongruent with the subpoena. He's taking the language, and I don't have them up side by side, but I think that's what he's doing. He's saying, look, the subpoena here is demanding this. The custodian of records signed that they gave them this. They're saying that the signing of that was obstruction. They're saying that you promised that you gave all these things over, you confirmed it in this document, and you didn't do that. They're saying that's obstruction. Barnes is saying no, because you didn't ask for that. The subpoena is, it's overbroad or underbroad, and the certificate of compliance is overlapping in a way that means that if you found other documents, it wasn't covered by either one of those things. So it's sort of like a law school, an LSAT games problem, but there's overage, and what the DOJ is saying is that there's not, that we demanded, that we asked for all of these things. You said, I checked for all of those things, and we don't have any of them. And they're talking about different things is really what it comes down to. And that's a great point by Barnes, as usual. Ed J says, if the DOJ can appeal a favorable decision for Trump to a DC court for all of this is for naught. Also, the picture taken of all the stuff on the floor, was it taken with a phone and redacted later? Isn't that device now classified as it contains classified info? And who has it? And where has it been? And where is it now? All extremely good questions. And what about was that a taint team person or a privilege team person or what? Don't know. Three Girlies is here. Shout out to the youngest girlie. Says, So I know that we're supposed to have a speedy trial, but what gives the government the idea that they need to have a speedy investigation? Well, it's because of your right to a speed. Well, I see what you're saying. So a speedy let me finish your comment before I start riffing. Doesn't a speedy investigation make you think that they're not giving it the seriousness that it needs? Wouldn't slowing this down allow for more time to actually come up with a coherent argument other than it's not fair? I just don't buy the argument from the government that they have the right to have a speedy investigation. Instead, isn't this the right of the citizen above the government not to be infringed upon? Yes. It seems like the government says I can stomp all over a citizen regardless of who they are, and there should be no review of it. Very authoritarian thinking. Yeah. A great argument, Heather. And we saw some of that in the motion today because they're basically saying that you don't even have any ability to make arguments because it might jeopardize what they need to do, right? You can't appoint a special master because it might interfere with them. Can't unrelease anything because it might interfere with them. Can't do anything because it might interfere with them. And you're saying, yeah, but hold on a minute now. We have the presumption of innocence and we have criminal procedure and due process and all of these things. Aren't those in the Constitution? And you're right, Heather. They are nicely ensconced. Kise says, just when I thought they couldn't get any stupider, here we are with takesies, backsies gate. I expect the next master plan to get Trump will probably involve a lollipop and incorrectly sized shoes. Yeah, that could be true. You know, those FBI, they're very sneaky and you never know what they're up to. Emotional old cat lady says, hey, Rob, it could always get worse. How could the FBI do this to me? Kennedy says, bro, you got off easy. All right. Just enjoy your Mar-a-Lago. All right. Yeah, just relax. That's a morbid meme. Thank you, emotional old cat lady. Engineer 12 volts says, bet if World War III happens with China or another dim Democrats, the dim Democrats will say, look, because President Trump mishandled these security documents, we had to go to war because he weakened our military. Treason is what they'll say. Yeah, they're already doing that. They're doing that with the schools. I don't know if you saw this. We talked about it this morning on our walk and talk. But it is... Yeah, it's what the results came out from school testing, right? Kids are like as dumb as ever because they locked them down. And that's the truth. I'm sorry to put it that way, but you know, they stole 2 years from kids, and math scores and English scores are all down in the dumps. Why? Because of the Democrats. They're blaming it on Trump. Cheryl says, the hub thumbed the channels. Brandon is only on like 2 channels. I've joined the grandbaby lobbying for Humpty Dumpty. So yeah, flipping around. Nobody's paying attention to him. Well, we'll see what the reaction looks like after the show. Emotional old cat lady says, the devil talking says, I told you all along, I'm coming for your souls. The soul of the nation. Yeah, he would take it too, along with that adrenochrome or whatever. NY Renal says, I thought primetime speeches were for national emergencies and important topics. The networks gave Biden free time during primetime for what? A political speech? The mainstream media is in the tank for Biden. Obviously true. Heather is here. 3 girlies says, I think the protester was saying F Joe Biden. Is that what he was saying? I couldn't hear. I have one earpiece in, so I can't get like stereo audio, you know? And I couldn't really hear what he was saying, but I could hear he was saying something. 3 girlies says, according to Jack Posobiec, he was right. That's funny. A Rumble rant came in from Larry 1. Thanks, V, for sharing that over here. Says, thanks, Robert. Well, thank you, Larry 1. I appreciate that. And shout out to our friends over on Rumble. You know, it's like a lot more people are going to be moving over there. And it's, you know, it's a good thing, unfortunately. It's a difficult thing that it has to be this way, but parallel systems require it. Soul Wound is over there. Gary FM. We also have Vientikis. Eric Scorpio is there, along with Lisa White. Shout out to Lisa. Sully, Soul Wound, Candy Gas are all over there. Annie, Get Your Gun, along with Rick 2020, member of the public, Dog Digger. Sammy JOS is there. Lots of people over there on Rumble. Shout out to our friends on Rumble. Speech Unleashed is here. He says, I find it interesting that Biden's slogan is, quote, fighting for the soul of the U.S., because God saves souls, but is the devil that fights to get the souls. Yeah. Biden looks like he could enjoy some souls. Maybe that's why he's always going after the children. 3 Girlie says, thank God for the snake Portman is retiring. He looks like he is captive next to Klobuchar. Oh, that guy. I didn't even know who that was. It looked like he was just sort of like a showpiece. Just kind of sitting there blinking. Just like, yeah, just whatever she says. I just hate my life. I can't wait to get out of here. He needs to be put out to pasture. Problem is, Tim Ryan has been my congressman for years, and he is horrible. I'm not a fan of J.D. Vance, but he would be way better than Tim Ryan. Yeah, that's one race, honestly, that I really know very little about, to be honest. J.D. is sort of he's this big name, and they're spending a lot of money in that race, but I just haven't been paying much attention to it. I've sort of been caught up in Blake Masters. Obviously, he's here. And Carrie Lake, obviously, she's sort of a national phenomenon. And then we had the New York cases and, of course, Oz and Fetterman. We talked about them all this morning, but yeah, I haven't paid much attention to JD, honestly. I probably should. Engineer says, I remember that time when Obama gave up our overseas spy names during his presidency, getting them killed. I think that number was 36 people. Nice. Martin has this. Biden's taking a selfie after his speech in front of the dumpster fire country that he is leaving for us. Former LEO says, did mush-brained Biden catch dementia from his press secretary? It might be a qualification in order to work in the White House. I'm not sure. Miss Lucky from Sergeant Bob says, hey, Sleepy Joe, Putin thought his big planes would bring the Ukrainians under his thumb. How'd that work out for him? Not well. Captain Jim says, hey, Rob, didn't know Biden was in town. I see a lot of lawn signs here in the suburbs for the Jackass Party candidates. I'm not disparaging Dems. It's their bleeding mascot animal. I mean, it's Jackass. Yeah. Says, how these people still vote Dem after 20 months of this, I will never know. Anyway, another very unbreaded show, Rob. Well, thank you very much for that, Captain Jim. I appreciate that. Unbreaded? Yeah. Yeah. All right. Martin says, meet the new month. Same as the old month. Oh, this is from the Who. I can't play music. You get the copyright strikes. But go check that out and rock on with Martin over on Locals. 3 Girlies says, hey, Joe and Karine, we are a republic, not a democracy. Benjamin Franklin didn't say it's a democracy if you can keep it. No, he said we have a republic if we can keep it. Youngest Girlie wanted to say hi and wanted to shout out. And so, gigantic, massive shout out to the youngest Girlie over at the 3 Girlies household. Hope you are having a wonderful day. Zach Nichols is sharing this meme from Joe. Joe Biden's riding down the street. He's on a bicycle as usual. This time he's typically right up. In this meme, his foot's not getting stuck in the pedal. In this meme, he's shoving a bike into the front wheel spokes, falling over, and then blaming Putin. Putin did this. Martin says, by the way, here's a quick libertarian reminder. The socialists started the lie that Robin Hood stole from the rich. He didn't. Robin Hood stole from the government and he gave it back to the people. I didn't know that, but that sounds nice. Martin says it says classified. It must be classified as the same argument as they call themselves Antifa, so they must be anti-fascists. That's a good one. It's chapter 1 of Thinking for Dummies. Chapter 2 is, quote, only read headlines. That's a funny one. Yeah, it says classified, so it must be classified. It's like 3 intelligence quotient points intelligence working there. Thunder 7 says, I noticed lately Biden is projecting a lot, calling MAGA semi-fascist when they are the very definition of fascist, them, saying colluding with businesses like big tech and the media to attack their political enemies, calling MAGA extremists when they are the extreme ones, calling MAGA violent when their Antifa BLM thugs burn the country down and hurt and kill people. I can go on and on and on, but it's either an unconscious projection or they're so desperate to separate themselves for who they truly are that they're pointing the finger at MAGA to make themselves feel better and that they are the victims. Either way, it's not working. The red wave is incoming and nothing can stop it. The more they attack MAGA, the more popular it becomes. Good to see you, Thunder. We have Martin says, Nick lives by the Groucho Marx quote, I would never be a part of a group that would have me as a member. Yeah, that too. Yeah. Nick's, he doesn't want to be a part of a YouTube channel. Not that I mean, of a network. I don't either. I hate group projects. I hate them. They're the worst. But, sometimes you have to do them, especially if the professor says you got to do it, whatever. All right. So we had a couple ones here. Let's see. Here we have, oh my gosh. Yes. Lots of comments today. Love this. Okay. We have here, this one came in from V. He says, Twitter also banned libs of TikTok, in case you didn't hear. The world is being run by toddlers. All these actions are explicitly about lording power over others. Yeah, God's word told us how our people are from Tricky. Jeremiah 4:22 says, For my people is foolish, they have not known me. They are sottish children, and they have none understanding. They are wise to do evil, but they do good, they have no knowledge. Yeah, they are toddlers. You're right about that. We had another one coming in from Thunder. Says, the plot thickens. Maggie Goodlander, married to Jake Sullivan, from Oxford, is counselor to A.G. Garland. News is breaking from Paul Sperry that they were looking for docs about Iran and Obama's nuclear deal and pallets of cash. Jake is currently negotiating another deal with Iran. Wow, these criminals are all related. It is very disgusting. Tweak says, Jay Brett is set to speak at a conference on FARA scheduled for December 8th and 9th. Scroll down the page and check out who's sponsoring it. Oh, gosh, this is just going to be great. Let's see what we've got here. 2022 government speaker. You can see this is the Foreign Agents Registration Act, 4th national forum on this. What are they focusing? The only dedicated platform to learn about FARA compliance and enforcement with leading enforcers. And there you see him, the same guy we've been talking all about, Jay Bratt, right? He was in court today with Donald Trump, with Trump's defense attorneys. He was not there. Co-chairs, we got lawyers from all over the place. Let's see who some of these partners are. Supporting sponsors, Arnold and Porter, Covington, Morris and Forrester, and Perkins Coie is in the house. Isn't that something? Thank you for that, Tweak. Very, very curious. Yeah, Perkins Coie. Oh, do you know who they are? Well, of course you do. That's over where Michael Sussman worked and Mark Elias. Oh, yeah. That was the same company, the same law firm that hired Fusion GPS that concocted through Christopher Steele and through Igor Danchenko the Steele dossier, which was the Trump PP tape. Then they fed all of that all over the place to get warrants, and then they took this over to the FBI. They tried to say Trump was colluding with the Russians. Michael Sussman got indicted, and then a bunch of partisan hack Democrat jurors acquitted him, even though he was clearly guilty of lying to the FBI. Obviously guilty of that. Very good comment, Tweak. Thank you for the link there. Three Girlie says, do you think the government's reply was lazy? After reading the response from Trump's team, it seems like the arguments are worse than a first-year law student. Well, honestly, I don't think they have many good arguments, so they were just seeing what they could make stick. Do you think the judge, so not necessarily lazy, like it was 39 pages and it was full, but I just don't think that they have a good argument. Like, it's clearly the case of the century. Why would you not want a special master? Do you think the judge didn't approve the special master so she can look through the cases? You think she's just taking time and due diligence rather than rubber? Yeah. Yes. So she's going to listen to the argument. She's going to really take her time and file a written opinion rather than making one on the record. Finally, from what I understand, the attorney arguing for Trump is Christopher Kise. You think they brought out the heavy hitter for this because he might have been before the judge before? Yeah, honestly, he seems like a very good lawyer. So I don't think you need to bring him out for anything. You just want to put him on everything. But yes, it's good that they got him. He's very competent from what we have seen. Viantikis says, it's going to be time to get Odyssey and Rofkin up and running too. I know V, and V has some concerns about some of the mergers happening on some of these platforms. I'm aware of that. We are diversifying, V, no doubt about it. Ray K says, I think Trump's lawyers have been watching you, Rob. Well, I don't know about that. I doubt that. Let's see what they've got here for us.
Former President Donald Trump have compared the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago to a dispute over an overdue library book. A Florida judge is deciding whether to appoint a special master to review.
Yeah, it is. It is overdue library books. That's the whole stinking thing here. I mean, my goodness, it's 100% true. They should use that. That should be their opening argument. It's a good analogy. I think it really hammers the point home, doesn't it? But I'm sure they came to that independently. I really doubt that they're watching the broadcast, but that'd be cool if they were. I would appreciate it. Maybe Trump would come on the show. JC the Music Man says, no matter who is on, we're all here because we are part of your community. It's our community, Jeremy. The other guys, that's why it's watchingthewatchers.locals.com, right? It's ours. It's not robertgovea.locals.com. It's watchingthewatchers.locals.com. mindmap.com. The other guys can be entertaining, but you, sir, always show your work and the time it takes through things step by step. You sprinkle in your well-timed humor as well. The replays for the other guys are going to be available to watch when we get around to it. Well, that's very nice, Jeremy. I do appreciate that, your hair. Yeah, and they put it, look, there's a lot of great content creators out there. I mean, I'm not joking. Like, I check out Nick, I watch Viva, I check out Barnes, I check out all sorts of other people because it's great content. And I was listening to Nick and I was laughing my ass off, and he had good points, and it's necessary to get out there and battle against these people. And Nick was bringing it to him, man. And I was happy to watch it, but I am very disappointed of the consequences of that conversation. And in particular, the efforts by those other types of people to silence their political enemies. I mean, it's silencing, it's censorship, and they are gleeful and giddy about it. You have to know who these people are. So if you haven't watched that, I'd encourage you to watch it. Go over to Divinity's channel and just watch it so you can see who you're dealing with, like who these people are. All right. Thank you, Jeremy. I'm glad that you were here. We're going to do one final refresh over on locals. I saw on YouTube, we had Kyle Beckman in. He says, my ancestor was George Reed, the delegate of Delaware who ratified the Constitution in 1787. He would climb out of his grave if I gave up my upgraded SCAR 16S to that tyrant occupying the White House. Kyle, that is one of the coolest things ever, my friend. I mean, the fact that you can trace your lineage back to that is so cool. I think that history it's meaningful. It really means something, and it sticks. It can kind of translate from one generation to another. And I'm grateful that you're on the right side of that issue. I agree with you. He would. And it sounds like he's not going to have to do that because your head's in the right place. And I'm grateful for that. Thank you, Kyle Beckman, for being here. And my friends, I do believe that is it for the program. So we are going to leave it there today. One final refresh over on locals. Here it is. We got one last one from Martin. He says, the mind map is a real game changer, but I love murder boards. Yeah, well, the mind map might evolve into a murder board. The murder board, are you talking about like the boards that like are all over the wall? You got the red strings and you're connecting all the dots. Maybe one day, maybe we can do that once Trump gets indicted. We'll just put it all up on a corkboard and red yarn the whole thing out. All right, and that came in over from Martin. That was the Martin comment. You can see that there. But that, my friends, is it for us for the day. We covered a lot of ground, some amazing comments and input from all of you. I'm grateful for it. Shout out to our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. That is the web address if you want to come and check out our community. You can also do that by clicking the join button on YouTube. Okay, we post the same walk and talk videos over there. The only real difference, of course, is that you don't get to sort of post your own stories into a community, which you get over at Locals. But otherwise, you get the GIFs, you get the Full Metal Jacket from Binger. You also get the Hunter GIF, and there's many others in there. There's a whole slew of them. If you have any thoughts on additional ads, I do have room for others, so just let me know. I also am a lawyer at the R&R Law Group, founding partner. We're an amazing law firm located in Scottsdale. We have just a team of the best people ever working, and we are dedicated to helping people find safety, clarity, and hope in their criminal cases. So if you know anybody in the state of Arizona passing through, just out here for the summer, visiting the Grand Canyon, traveling to visit friends or family, whatever, and they get into a little trouble, we would just love the opportunity to help. We have an entire team. We offer free case evaluations. We have a lot of fun here on this channel, but when it's court time, when it's business time, okay, we leave all of that aside and we really, really focus on the presumption of innocence, the burden of proof, and helping people get the results that they want so that they can get back to living their lives in the best way possible. We are so grateful for your referrals. Thank you for thinking of us anytime you hear somebody who needs some help. 480-787-0394. And of course, big shout out and thank yous to all the mods who mod down the fort for us, holding things down. Big thank you to Vientikis Prime, K-Bean, Just Cause is here, Lean, Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zulu is in the house, and Zulu's got that big 8-month anniversary. Been around a lot longer than that, but thank you, Zulu, for all of that, for everything you do here. Shout out to Gio, our retired Lava Java Lava, our big Spotlight supporters who contribute a little bit of extra monetary love to the show. thank you to Chris Romero, David B3, Dr. EMB in the house, along with John over at qsimple.com. Head on over to qsimple.com, check out some of the work that they do. They contribute, and so we like to share a little bit of screen real estate with them, and if you're interested in that, of course, please let me know. But otherwise, my friends, that is it for the day. Thank you so much for sharing the show with somebody else. Just, hey, this is a good show. Or sharing the shorts. Okay, I'm posting a lot of shorts. The show is being clipped up into shorts. Thank you for sharing those. A little bit more bite-sized chunks that you can, send out to friends or family and say, hey, we go live every day, 4 o'clock. Bring them on over here. It really does help us grow because YouTube, as you know, they keep us kind of censored and siloed. We're search sort of shadow banned. All the videos, after these videos are completed, they're all demonetized immediately. All the clips are almost all of them demonetized immediately. And so a big part of the show's success is really due to you. So thank you for helping us out by sharing it, by liking the video, by subscribing, and helping us spread the word because we know there's a lot more to get to. There's going to be a lot more left to unpack here, and we will do it all with your help. And so that, my friends, is it for us for the day. I hope you have a tremendous evening, that you sleep very well, that you get a nice, good, restful sleep, because we're going to be back here to do it all again tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you there. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Be well. Bye-bye.